This week's episode is brought to you in part by FreshBooks. FreshBooks is the cloud accounting software that I use and I love. Using FreshBooks is the simplest way to be more productive, organized, and most importantly, get paid quickly in your business. FreshBooks is simple, and even if you're not a numbers person, actually, especially if you're not a numbers person, you will love it and be able to use it easily. Outsourcing the stuff that you don't like or you're not as good at is the best thing to do for your business and in your life, and FreshBooks is like having a financial assistant in your business. I love FreshBooks, especially now during tax season. It really helps a lot. So check out FreshBooks today for your business. You can get a 30-day unrestricted free trial by going to freshbooks.com/letitout and entering Let It Out in the How Did You Hear About Us section. That's freshbooks.com/letitout and enter Let It Out in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Today's episode is also brought to you in part by Third Love. Third Love is a company that makes bras and underwear designed for the modern woman. When it comes to bra shopping, it's all about finding the right size for you. And there's only one brand of lingerie that offers bras in size AA through G, and they have half cup sizes, and that's Third Love. Third Love uses thousands of real women's measurements and super smoothing memory foam to create bras that fit great and feel great. I love them, and did you know that most bra companies only carry 15 sizes? Well, at Third Love, our friends there, they carry 60 sizes, including the half cup sizes. So find the bra that fits for you. There's even a fit finder quiz, and you never have to have that awkward fitting room experience again. They're just really great. I absolutely love them, and I'm so excited that they're a sponsor. This year, make the change that will change the way you think about bras. Go to thirdlove.com/letitout now to find your perfect fitting bra and get 15% off your first purchase. That's thirdlove.com/letitout. thirdlove.com/letitout for 15% off your first purchase.
Katie, let it out with Katie. Let it out with Katie Dalebout, enthusiast and curator of people and ideas you need to hear.
Hello, welcome back to the podcast. You are listening to Let It Out with me. I'm your host, Katie Dalebout, and this is my podcast. I'm here in Detroit, actually, in a little recording studio we made because I'm working on a special project that will be out, I don't know, hopefully really soon. Anyway, today is a special episode because it's actually the last episode of the season. After today, I will be going on a very needed, short 3-week break from the podcast, but don't worry, it's a great episode today, one of my favorites, and if you're new, welcome. Each week I talk to creative, fascinating people about their work, their life, their relationships, spirituality, what they eat, what they do for fun, and we just connect and have these really long-form, organic conversations. But before we get to today's episode, that's a long conversation, and the last before the break, please stay subscribed, or if you're new, subscribe so you can remember to listen when the new season returns. Because I'm going to be back and better than ever. Things are going to be new around here. New music, new album art, new guests, of course, new discounts from brands that I love. I'm coming out with a new mini-series and so much more. I cannot wait for you to hear all of the changes and exciting updates that I'm making to the podcast. So if you aren't on my email list, make sure to join that. I send out a cool Let It Out letter I would say every week, but it's not. And I would say every month, but it's also not, unfortunately. But every so often, hopefully I'll be doing it more soon. But anyway, it's this newsletter that I send out that's mostly a long form personal essay from me, plus links and meanderings to things that I've watched and listened to and eaten over the past month or so that I've really liked and want to share. So join that, subscribe on iTunes, and join the listener Facebook group. That's a great place to connect with other listeners and guests of the podcast and myself. And best of all, our Patreon page. You guys, the Patreon page is popping. We have special content going out there regularly now. I really enjoy the Patreon page. I like being on there. I like sharing things. And if you enjoy the show, if you find value from it, if it makes you feel less alone, if you like this episode, supporting the Patreon page would be really cool. Plus, you'll get some really cool bonuses. In fact, there are a lot of really cool bonuses that I want to tell you about right now. One of them is that while we're on this break, I'm actually going to be putting out a special episode for the Patreon community exclusively that will be in the new format with the new theme music and have, all these new bells and whistles. So if you want to be the first to hear that before the 3 weeks that you have to wait until we be back, get in the Patreon community. It's the best, and you'll get to hear it early. So that's that. And then also, there's all these different levels for supporting the podcast, and the first 5 people to join the ambassador level will get a rebranded version of my Wonder fragrance. It's an essential oil fragrance that I got to design with one of my favorite natural skincare brands, Good Medicine Beauty Lab, a couple months ago. Actually, I've had it for maybe over a year and a half now. Anyway, they rebranded it and it's beautiful, and I'm giving away 5 of them free to people who sign up. So be on the Patreon page. That would be really cool. Anyway, all right, let's get to the episode. Since I'm leaving you for 3 weeks, this is a very, maybe my longest yet episode of the podcast. And I was even maybe thinking about splitting it into 2 episodes, but I'll leave you with this. It's one of my favorites. It's going to leave a good taste in your mouth while I'm gone. You could even ration it and split it up over the next 3 weeks if you really wanted to. But this episode really hits a lot of notes for me. It's exactly how I want all of the conversations on this podcast to feel and be like. We talk about writing, creativity, relationships, how she knew that her husband was the one for her. That was one of my favorite moments in this episode. We talk about body image, as we do usually on this podcast. It's such a great conversation. Today's guest is Dini, the super talented copy director and essayist whose work has been featured in Vogue, Refinery 29, and one of her essays was featured in the New York Times Modern Love column, which I love. This episode is great. We connected last summer over the internet and recorded this in, I think, October. And since it was long ago, there's a couple updates. She mentions that her episode of the Modern Love podcast version of the New York Times column is about to come out, but since this was recorded, it has come out, so the link to that is in the show notes. Definitely listen to it. We also talk about how we really wanted to go to dinner and become friends, and since this was recorded, we did get to do that. We had a lovely evening at Dimes having drinks and dinner. Anyway, she's great. And also, I think I mentioned Greta Gerwig and how I was so excited to see Lady Bird. And of course, since this has come out, I've seen Lady Bird twice, and I did, in fact, love it. It's a great episode. I'm rambling now, so let's get right to it. I love you guys. Please subscribe and keep in touch. I'll miss you for the next 3 weeks, but really I won't, because I'll be in the Facebook group and on the Patreon page, and hopefully I'll send you an email between now and then, and I'll be back better than ever. Yeah, I've been excited to meet you in person since we met on the internet, and I've just been so excited to have you on the podcast and learn more about you. And then it was so much fun. That's my favorite part of doing this. And like I was saying before, I've been doing this since 2013, but it allows me and forces me to be able to spend time with a person while I'm preparing, and I get to sit and read all of your articles, and I get to just kind of sit with your work, and I only have on people I'm so excited about, and so it was just so fun to hang out with you on the internet, and then now have you here. It's
you're technically, I think you're my first internet friend.
I was gonna say internet stalker. I was like, what's the word you're trying to come up with?
My first internet friend, most of the people, it's just not very often that I get to meet someone on Instagram and then I get to be friends with them on Instagram and then I get to meet them in person, like later.
It's happening.
Yeah, it's happening. I love it.
Before we forget, first of all, you look beautiful.
Thank
I'm
you.
Instagramming this setup we have here. We got kombucha. We've got lots of podcast devices. Cheers. You have the most amazing skin.
Oh my god.
Beautiful skin.
I was just thinking that about you.
Really? Oh my gosh, I have a huge pimple right here, but it's going down.
I would have never noticed it unless you had just pointed to it.
Oh, I have a really bad habit of like when I have one coming on that's like nothing, I just pick it. It makes it worse.
I just went, to be fair though, I got a facial yesterday. So that's probably another reason. I do take very good care of my skin. I'm a bit of a fanatic about it, but I did just get a facial. So
where did you go?
Heyday.
Oh, they're so good.
Yeah, it was great.
They're so good and like easy to book with and like
so
user friendly.
Well, and I used to work down at the World Trade Center, and so I was very familiar with the area, and I knew it was down there, but I'd never been, and so I
haven't been to that one, but I've been to the one Flatiron.
Oh, okay, yeah. I do this every time I come to New York now as a tourist, and it's like I might as well just open my wallet and run down the block and like let my money fly out, because I come into town and I act like Daddy Warbucks and I just spend all of my money. So yeah, I was like, I'm gonna get a massage and I'm gonna get a facial. Like, I am a freelancer. I should not, but to be fair, I know the things I like here and I know what's good, and so I haven't had a massage in a really long time because I've been waiting until I can come back. Totally. I go to Massage Williamsburg, and it's just the best.
Oh, I should go there.
I love it.
It's so easy to get to Williamsburg from here.
Oh, yeah. And you used to live there, right?
Yeah.
Where were you?
I say used to live there. This apartment wasn't going to be ready until like a month after my apartment was taken in Detroit. So I was like, I'm moving on June 1st, and this place that I found wasn't going to be ready. So I was like, okay, whatever. I'll just get an Airbnb where I actually wanted to live. So I lived in Williamsburg, which was great because like all of my friends live in Bushwick or like in Brooklyn. So that was really where.
So you knew people here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I knew people here. Like my best friends from college live here.
Where'd you go to college?
Michigan State. So big state school in Michigan. So I grew up in the same town as I went to college in.
My gosh.
Yeah, so I didn't even go away to college. I know.
That's crazy.
I mean, I didn't live at home, but I know.
Oh, you didn't live at home.
I didn't live at home, but like
you were close.
It was close.
That's
yeah,
nice.
I could walk home. But yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so anyway, it was like a great big move, like something I wanted to do forever. But
I love that you did that, even though you knew you were going to have a long distance relationship.
Yeah, well, I knew when I met him, I knew that I wanted to move like immediately. So that's like a whole that's kind of, and I'm really proud of myself that I didn't not do it.
Me too. I'm proud of you.
Thanks.
That's so great.
Thanks.
I think if you're 26?
27.
27. I think, well, I was 27 when I met my husband, but I don't know. I think in my 20s, that's not true. By the time I was 27, I would have been like self-possessed enough to have done something like that, but definitely not before. I definitely would have been hindered had I been in a relationship when I was younger in my 20s. Yeah,
it was one of those things that like I always wanted to do, and I knew I was in this new relationship that it was actually really funny. Like our third date or like hang, we'd hung out like 2 times before this, and we'd been hanging. It was one of those like all day dates, you know what I mean? Like it was great. Like we like did something, and then we went on a really long walk, and then whatever, and there was the end of the time we were hanging out. Like he had to be somewhere, so we were leaving, and we talked about everything at that. That was the date where we like got to know each other, you know? Like we talked about our parents, we talked about whatever. And so the entire time I didn't want to say that I was moving to New York because this was like pretty much done, like set in place. I was just like waiting for the time with work and with everything. But I just didn't bring it up because I was like, if I bring up that I'm moving, then he'll know I like him, you know?
Right.
And so I like didn't want to say it because you wouldn't just say that to a friend like, oh, I'm moving.
Right. Oh, by the way.
Right. So the whole date had happened, and then we like hugged, we said goodbye, he had to leave, and then I like walked, I could like do a dramatization of this, like I've like acted it out before, it's better when I'm standing, but anyway, so I like walk away, And then I look back and I'm like, so I'm moving to New York. And he was like totally caught off guard and like in a rush. And he was like,
wait, what?
I don't know why I did that. It was so weird. And so he was just like, oh, okay, cool. Like, obviously I'm bummed, but like, good for you. Like, I gotta go. But
and you weren't even gonna like be able to follow it up with like, but I hope that we can still hang out.
No, it was like,
okay, bye.
It was so strange. And so I remember I got in my car and I called my best friend and I was like, okay, so you know that guy that I have a crush on, whatever, we've been hanging out. Don't ask about it anymore. It's done. I definitely ruined it. So like, please don't ask about it. I just want to let you know that like that's off the table now. I just did something really weird.
Oh my gosh, that's so
was
cute.
so funny.
But you're still together.
And then he like texted me 2 minutes after that, and then like it was
you guys are
fun.
adorable. I love following your little like love fest on your
Oh my
Instagram.
gosh, thanks. I'm like,
and he's a photographer.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we have so much to talk about, but I'm turning it back to you. So let's start at the beginning. Where did you grow up? You grew up in the South, in Mississippi?
I am from Jackson, Mississippi,
Okay.
from a small town outside of Jackson, and I lived there until I was 18, and then I went to the University of Alabama.
Okay.
I feel like when I say that, I'm like, University of Alabama.
Yeah, I sense like a little bit of an accent.
Yes. Well, I lived in New York for 11 years.
Yeah.
So there was a thing that happened when I got here. Because I moved when I was 22 years old. And I was young and, I was green as hell. Just so fresh-faced and 22
You still are.
years old. Thank you. But, I was naive and just as you are when you're 22 years old. You're young and you haven't experienced, the sort of like anger and bitterness that you do once you live in New York for a while. And, but that said, I did come across as a young little babe. But I was blonde then
Still
as
are.
well. Still are.
Great hair color, by the way, which we'll talk about later.
Get to that. I know I was going to say that about your hair.
Thank you.
And I was just very self-conscious about people sort of underestimating me. Because I had this southern accent, and I was blonde, and I smiled a lot, and I was very friendly. And it became clear to me pretty quickly that people sort of looked at me the same way they look at small puppies, in a way that I did not like. I felt like I was sort of being undermined, and I was like, I moved to New York to get shit. I don't want to cuss.
No, you can.
Okay.
Feel free.
I moved to New York to get shit done, and to experience, again, a life that I had never even imagined. Growing up in Mississippi, New York was, I couldn't even fathom what that was like. And I had known for a long time that I wanted to come to New York also. So when I got here, I worked really hard to get rid of my southern accent. And I don't even remember how I did it, but I just remember not embracing it, I guess is a better way to say it. And then I got a job at this kitschy barbecue restaurant. I don't even want to say on the air. But it was a wonderful place, but it has a very different reputation now. Well, maybe not, but it's very different now than it was when I worked there. It was the Brother Jimmy's. Okay. And it's I worked. I don't know what that is. It's a very kitschy southern bar and restaurant. It's owned by it's like a North Carolina bar. You know how different bars in the city. Totally. This is the Alabama bar. There's like a Michigan bar, whatever. Yeah. So it was a North Carolina sort of themed bar, and I went to work there and as a hostess and then a waitress, and I don't know, I just hated the way people were like, "Oh, you're so cute," and that was not funny to me at all. And I would walk up to the table and say, "What can I get y'all to drink?" And they're like, "Oh, y'all, that's so adorable. Do they make you say that?" And I was, no. So I had a very sort of love-hate relationship with my heritage in the South for a long time, because I was also very proud to be from Mississippi and to be Southern, but I sort of hated the way that people assumed, people made obviously huge assumptions about the South, people who'd never been. And so, of course, I was torn between needing to sort of stand up for the South and stand up for Mississippi, but also being sort of horrified by what was happening in Mississippi and still does happen in Mississippi.
Yeah.
And so it was this, I don't know, it was very complicated. So when I first got here, I was like, I don't want to have this thick Southern drawl anymore. And I worked really hard to get rid of it. And then after a few years, I was sort of like, forget about it. I don't want to, I'm just going to talk the way I talk, and I don't care what people think about it. But by that point, I kind of already lost a little bit of the drawl. I still have it, and it depends also who I'm with. I mean, if I get on the phone with one of my parents, I like slip back into it real hard.
Yeah.
Or if I'm with one of my friends from the South, it comes out. Or if I'm drunk, it comes out.
I was going to say, it's that line in Josh Radnor's movie. Have you seen Happy Thank You More, Please?
But I know about it from your podcast.
Well, there's this line where the character, her name is Mississippi, and she's from Mississippi, and she has this line, and I think Josh Radnor's character, Sam, says to her, "Where's your accent?" And she's like, "It's there when I need it," and like goes into it. Yeah, it's Kate Mara's character. It
awesome.
Reminds me of
yeah, exactly. So yeah, the Southern accent comes out, but it definitely at this point is, I was in New York for so long that it's sort of like, it's a little neutral, I guess. I don't know. Different people pick up on it. Not everybody does, but some people are like, you have an accent.
Yeah, I see it a little bit. People are constantly telling me that I have a Midwestern accent since being here.
That's funny.
Yeah. There's certain words. So what was it like growing up there? What was your childhood like? Did you know, I know you used to dance. Did you know you wanted to be a writer? What was growing up there like?
Oh my gosh. It was amazing. I had a really wonderful childhood, and I really had a charmed life, to be honest. I mean,
do you have brothers and sisters?
I do. I have one older brother who I'm very close to.
How many years apart?
5. He's 5.5 years older than me.
Okay.
Yeah. And, I've always had a good relationship with my parents.
Are they still together?
They are. And at times I have wondered if they should be, but they have been on their own journey together. And so they both still live in Mississippi in a suburb outside of Jackson. And my brother now lives in Boston. I was just there visiting him, and he has 2 kids who I'm very close with. And,
cool.
And I've known my sister-in-law since I was 14. So,
wow.
So I'm very close to them. And it was... Yeah, growing up, and I don't think anybody knows when they're in it how great it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's because it's all you know.
Yeah, it's the same thing when it's dysfunctional too. I don't think you notice the dysfunction
Absolutely.
of life. When I found myself in therapy in college, and someone else told me like, that's a little bit weird. I was like, oh, I just thought that was like how people interact with each other.
Everybody was.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So you're just unaware as a kid.
Absolutely, and that realization definitely happened for me when I left the South. Like that was a thing, leaving the South and then coming back to it. I was like, oh, wow, okay, because you just don't know. You grow up around it, and you grow up around these things that are so normal or commonplace, and then you get away from it, and you're like, that is messed up.
Yeah.
Or you go back and you think, wow, I was so fortunate, and I had a great childhood. I was a chubby kid, as you may have seen in my essay, and so that was definitely a thing that informed a lot of my life. Again, which who's to know? Like, how would you know at the time? But then I, grew out of that, and I was well liked. I mean, I was really friendly. My mom, both of my parents, but my mom in particular did a very good job of just always making sure that my brother and I were grounded, and that I very specifically remember a moment when I was a little girl and I was in the mall with my mom, as you do, and I saw this girl that I went to elementary school with, or middle school or something like that, because middle school is so complicated, and obviously kids are so mean. And I wasn't a mean kid, but I saw this girl that I didn't like very much. She was kind of annoying. She was like, she was really hyper, and she was like kind of spastic and like really goofy. And I think people just didn't really know what to do with her because she wasn't, she was just had a lot of energy for her tiny little body.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to speak to her because I was like, I don't want to like say hey to her, I was embarrassed or whatever. And I remember my mom putting the kibosh on that situation so hard. And she turned to me and was like, you are no better than anybody else. And don't you ever act like it. I know. And I remember, I was probably like 8 or something, maybe 9. And I remember being so, obviously she was right. And it was, just one of those moments where I was so embarrassed. I was so ashamed in that moment that I had acted that way. As you do sometimes when you're a kid.
Yeah.
Or, sometimes as an adult, I guess. But anyway, I have amazing parents, and I have a great relationship with them. And as, it has evolved, as all relationships do. But it's always been good. And, let me see, I feel like you had
Were you a writer?
No, I was not. So growing up, I wanted to be an actress. I wanted to be
me too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did
you do musical theater?
Absolutely.
Of course.
So I did, when I got into high school, I did forensics, like speech and debate. Mm-hmm. And that was a really big part. I did dance when I was in high school, but it was like competition jazz. I did not go to, a serious ballet studio. My technique was never very good. And but I loved to perform. I would sing. I sang a lot. I took vocal lessons throughout kind of my childhood and into my teenage years. And, did competition jazz, and I did theater, and was in the plays. I was, in high school, I was Patty Simcox in Grease.
Oh my gosh.
I was Audrey in Little Shop of Horrors.
Oh my gosh,
and which
that's
was
huge.
So fun. And I went to kind of a small school.
They did Little Shop my freshman year of high school.
Oh, really?
And the quick story, I just told Nick, my boyfriend, about this. I had gone to a Catholic school, and then I transferred to the public school, so I knew no one my freshman year. But I did musical theater in middle school. My mom was like, just go to the audition. I was like, there's one role in that play. I'm not going to get it. It's going to go to a senior. Why am I here? And I was so intimidated, and I left the audition before my time because I got so scared. So whenever I hear someone talking about Little Shop, I'm like, oh my god, that's so cool. The older kids.
Such a good play.
Oh, it's amazing. That's
musical, I guess.
I was already starstruck when you walked in, but now it's so on another level.
Yeah, and then I was Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz my senior year.
Oh,
but nobody can sing those notes like Judy Garland. That was very tough for me.
That is so cool.
So that was my trajectory.
Very cool.
I went to college at Alabama, and my parents very similarly were, my dad was really into the idea that I would always be able to support myself, that I would should never ever depend on a man to pay my way for anything, and he was really adamant that I go get a very sensible degree. As parents, only want the best for their children.
Yeah.
And
they want us to be safe before happy.
Yeah, exactly. And I respected that, and I seemed like a good idea. I also didn't want to be codependent on other people, and then I got to college, and so I thought that I would study public relations because I thought I'm good with people, and there's some writing involved, and I liked writing when I was in high school. I enjoyed it very much, and I was always English was always my best subject. I was really, really, really bad at math. I had tutors.
Me too.
All through high school. I was just irking by in math always. And, I lost my train of thought.
Well, when you went to college, did you stop doing musical theater, or were you going to...
Oh, right. So I got there, and I didn't intend to keep doing musical theater because by the time I got to college, I don't really remember. I think that I thought to myself maybe I would do some plays and some shows for fun, but that I wouldn't pursue that full time. And I got there and I realized that I wanted to audition. I went through one semester as a public relations major, because you don't really claim your major initially.
Yeah,
sort of
it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, and then you narrow it down. And I thought that I would do public relations, and I have a very short attention span, and I was just bored as hell. And I thought, there is no way I will graduate if I have to go and sit in these lecture halls and listen to people talk at me.
Yeah.
I had a hard enough time in high school paying attention and listening and being an active participant. And I just thought, I have to do something that I truly enjoy. And so I auditioned for the dance program I guess it was at the end of my first semester. And I was not a great dancer. I never was a great dancer. I was a good performer, I think. But like I said, I started ballet too late. I just didn't have the technique that I really needed to shine. But for some reason, these people clearly saw potential that I was not a total garbage person and could, pull it together. And so I made the program, I started dancing, and because I felt like I was pretty far behind, I would go to Birmingham, which was about 45 minutes away from Tuscaloosa, where my college was, and I would take private lessons. Maybe once a week, twice a week, probably only once a week, from a professional dancer there. Mm-hmm. And so I thought that was it. That was my plan, was to... Honestly, I wasn't planning long term, but I thought, this is a thing that I love. This is going to at least get me through college. I will graduate from college because I was a dancer. And it was wonderful. I miss it very much. And then I moved to New York to be a professional dancer with that intention.
So that became your major? You abandoned... So
that was my major.
Okay.
I was a dance major and an English minor, and I decided that I didn't... And I did do a few shows. I was in ragtime. And I really wanted to be in a chorus line, but it coincided with one of the dance performances that I did instead. So we had 2 major performances every semester. One was a student choreographed, student run show, and then there was the professor choreographed and the run by them. So I loved choreographing. That was kind of the thing that I loved performing, but again, like I said, it wasn't. And I talk about my dance career like I was terrible. It wasn't terrible, but I knew at the time that I was not ever going to be the star dancer of anything. I was getting by, and but I loved to choreograph, and I did it a few times in college, and then when I moved here, I actually choreographed a small thing at a local show. Cool. And we performed this place in Times Square, and that was exciting. But when I got here, everybody told me that if I wanted to make money, that I had to do musical theater. And by that point, I'd kind of moved away from musical theater. I was really into just strictly dance, the art of dancing. I did a lot of modern and contemporary dance because, again, my strength was I was never going to be a ballerina. And I danced on point, but again, I was not very good at it either. I barely got by. And everyone said, if you want to dance, you have to do musical theater. And so I was like, okay, I'll do that. So I got a vocal coach again, and I started doing that. And I was going to Broadway Dance Center and taking classes, and I was temping, so to make money. And then eventually I started waiting tables. And I went to several auditions, and it just never felt right. It never... I never felt excited about it. And I think a lot of that is just the culture shock of going from your community when you're in college and you get to perform, twice a semester, and you get to really dance your heart out every day. And it's so rewarding. And then you come to New York and nobody cares.
Yeah, you're a big fish in a small pond.
Yeah, exactly. And so you get here and you don't have an opportunity to perform, maybe ever, because you have to be hired to perform. And I miss that so much. And I remember the day, actually, this is one thing that I talked about on the Life TK podcast, but the day I gave up, I went to an audition for Chicago, and I, am wearing the black fishnets and the red, plunging V-neck leotard, and my hair is slicked back, and I have red lipstick on and false lashes, and I am like ready to go, and I show up, and you go in, you give your headshot and your resume, and then you go into this huge room with all the people who are warming up and stretching and singing. And I was always intimidated, so intimidated by the entire experience. I just hated it. And I remember it was like 8:30 in the morning, and one of the casting directors comes out and is like, "Hello everyone, I'm so sorry. We can only see Union today. Can we see numbers 7, 30, 45, and 120. Thank you everyone, have a great day." And I just remember being so irrationally angry about it.
Yeah, because you put your false lashes on.
I put my false lashes. I was like, what am I going to do now?
Fishnets on.
I can't go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
I can't go to the gym like this. So that was the turning point that I realized I just didn't want it bad enough. I did not love it enough to slog through the shit.
Yeah. And
so that was officially when I quit dancing. I kind of drew it out for longer than I should have. I kept taking classes. It was so closely identified with who I thought I was.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to let go of that. And that was very hard. It was very hard for me, because then at that point, I thought, if I'm not a dancer, then I'm just this girl who's waiting tables. And I don't have another thing, And not that waiting tables is bad by any means, but most people, in New York, you can actually have a career waiting tables and make very good money. But, at 23 years old and I'm working at this barbecue restaurant, that's not exactly the career that I was looking to have. And so I remember having a really hard time letting go of that. But I don't know at what point I decided I wanted to be a writer. But I do remember one Thanksgiving, and this must have been like 2006 or 7 maybe, and I was living on the Upper East Side with my best friend, a girl who's still my best friend, but she's from Mississippi, and no, she's one of my best friends from growing up, from childhood, and we were living together. And I remember we hosted a Thanksgiving with some friends, and I remember being really inspired to write something. And I think I just wrote about the experience of having all the people over, and sort of the smell and what we were seeing and who the people were. And I remember sort of creating this nonfiction narrative about the experience. And
almost like a journal entry, but
yeah. And it's kind of, do you ever read Elizabeth Gilbert's work?
I'm obsessed with
her. She's amazing.
That's how I met Nick, which I'll tell you later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But, I can't remember what she calls it, but, she has a name for that stroke of inspiration.
Yeah.
She calls them gnomes or something.
Yeah.
I can't remember that. And it was one of those things. It was like an outpouring of creativity, and I had to get it down on paper, and I was so alive. And like I said, I had always written, and then I was an English minor in college, and so I was obsessed with F. Scott Fitzgerald, and I had my favorite. To be disclaimer, and this is a terrible thing for a writer to say, but I'm not a very good reader. I know it's like the worst thing I could say. I try very hard, but because of that, I read a lot of short stories. And I write usually in essay form because I have a hard time writing beyond that. But
it's my favorite kind of reading.
Yeah, I like a little snackable.
Yeah, me too.
Pieces.
I like eating snacks. I like reading snacks.
Exactly. I just want. I'm
not the novel
everything.
or the meal.
Exactly. And I don't know. I remember deciding that I wanted to be a writer, and I was waiting tables at that point. I had stopped tipping. I hadn't been dancing for quite some time, and I just remember, I don't know what made me think this. I can't trace it back to any one moment, But I remember thinking, all I want to do is be a writer, and I want it so bad that I am willing to be the worst writer on the planet. I am willing for people to turn me away, to insult my work. Like, I want it so badly that I will do anything to be better all the time. And I still feel that way. It was just this moment I had that I was like, this is the only thing in the world that I care so much about, that I don't care how many times people tell me no, or they say this is bad, or this is stupid. I will keep writing, and everything I do, every job I take from this moment forward, I will do it with the intention of becoming a better writer. Yeah. And that is how I began my journey.
So what happens next? So you're living in New York, you decide you want to be a writer, and then, you know, if we cut to now, you're a very successful writer. I love your work. You have this amazing blog and platform.
So sweet. I do not feel like a successul writer at all.
Well, you are to me, and I love what you do with words and sentences, and I think you're so talented, and I want to talk to you about that way more. But what happened next that your writing actually gets seen after that first Thanksgiving thing?
So when I was working at the bar, one of the girls who had been, you know, she'd worked at Brother Jimmy's for a very long time. She owned a catering company, and she was hosting. This is so crazy. I feel like there's a select few people who may be listening to this that might remember this era, but it was when Justin Timberlake opened Southern Hospitality, the restaurant, on the Upper East Side, and it was right across the street from the Brother Jimmy's that I worked at, which is no longer, which makes me very sad. And so she was hosting his launch party, and no, that's not his launch party. It was the launch party of a magazine. So Southern Hospitality had been there. It was relatively new.
Is it still there?
That is a great question. I also haven't been to the Upper East Side.
Somebody yelp that and get back to us.
Let us know if Justin Timberlake's restaurant is still open. And it was like a Southern barbecue place.
Got it. So it's across the street from your Southern
like across the
place.
street and a few blocks down.
Okay.
And so this magazine called Southern Beauty, which was based out of Birmingham, Alabama, was opening. I mean, yeah, they had just launched, and they were having their launch party at Southern Hospitality. That's what it was. And I don't know. I don't know why I was so oblivious. I mean, determined / completely naive, which I guess is a good thing.
Great combination, yeah. Determined and naive.
I was, and so
Your memoir.
heard that, and my ears perked up, and I go to my friend who runs the catering company, and I'm like, can you introduce me to the people at this magazine? It's called Southern Beauty. I am
Southern and beautiful.
Southern. I love beauty. I would like to write for this magazine. Mind you, I have no experience. I have no writing samples, because the things that I wrote were not things I would have submit.
Right.
Because I'm like 24 years old or something, and you know, all I knew at this point is that I wanted to be a writer, and I didn't even know in what capacity. I didn't even think like I want to be an editor or a journalist, or, you know, a fiction writer. No, I just was like writing in general, which is kind of how I still am. But I asked her if she would make an introduction to these people, and so she agrees. She finally introduces me to the people, and I am sort of like, again, naive as hell. And I'm like, hi, you're a new magazine, and I'm a new writer. Sort of
Let's like, team up.
Don't you want to work together? And I basically... I mean, I think harassed is probably the right word, but I would like to say it was like gently nudged them for about 4 months. They finally caved and agreed to let me interview a fashion designer named Jody Arnold, and she's from Birmingham, and she lives in New York, and they're like, take it away. I had never interviewed anyone. I did not know any fashion designers in New York. I didn't know anything about fashion. was completely oblivious, but for whatever reason, these people, again, thought that I could handle it. And I interviewed her on the phone, and I remember being so scared and intimidated, again, because I'm thinking, my idea of a New York fashion designer when I'm 24 years old is mean and, you know, aggressive. And I was not, at that point, aggressive. I grew into that. And she was so nice. She was so sweet and so lovely and gracious. And I write this article, which I am certain is total garbage, but whatever the editor did with it, it was good enough to put in the magazine. And that was so then I published a print piece. And so
cool.
I'm over the moon. I have published my first piece in print. This is probably 2007 at this point, maybe 8. And so then a girlfriend of mine who she is now a very successful travel writer, but she had a very popular blog, and this is 2007 or 8 when blogs did not exist. I mean, except for Tavi, and then there was like a handful of blogs. It was like Style Rookie and a few others. Like, this is back in the day of Daily Candy.
Yeah.
When that was a thing that people really, the internet was so new.
Yeah.
And so she had been my roommate for a year. We met through Craigslist back when Craigslist was not super creepy. And I lived with her, and she saw that I had published this thing, and she said, I can't pay you, but would you want to write for my blog? She was not not living in New York anymore at that point. And so she was like, you can go to these events for me, and you can write about them, and you can do beauty reviews and whatever. So I thought, great. So I did that for her. She sends me on this is such a long story. I'm sorry.
This is it. This is perfect. This is just, we're telling your story.
Oh, it's so long. Because so much happened.
No, this is great.
And she sent me to a roundtable discussion. I can't even remember what it was about. And I sit next to a girl who was from a blog called dailysense.com. And she sees that I'm there on behalf of my friend, who is a pretty well-known blogger at that point, and also writer. I mean, she had worked at magazines for a long time, and so she had a great reputation. And she was like, oh, we're looking for a beauty writer at Daily Sense. Are you interested? And of course I said yes, because I would not say no. Even though I, at this point, had no authority on beauty. I knew nothing about, I mean, aside from when I was a little girl, I would buy the Bobbi Brown beauty books, and she's got several, but I just devoured them. I loved everything about them. My mom's side of the family is Lebanese, and so they've always been really diehard about skincare, and I don't know, I just loved it. I loved makeup and creams and oils, and so beyond that, I knew nothing. And but of course, I said that I would love to be the beauty writer at Daily Sense. And so they, with very little credibility, they're just like, okay, great. Now you're the in-house beauty writer at Daily Sense. So my column was called Beauty Sense. And they let me write about anything. They let me write about blush that I was into. They let me write about a new night cream that I loved. I mean, it was truly the wild, wild west of the blogging days. And I did that.
It's like now with podcasting.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, it was like marketing and PR companies there was no structure. There was no strategy. People were just sort of like, I'll send you this thing and maybe you can write about it. It's like, okay, cool, fun. So it was like that back in the day. And I did that for a while. From there, I eventually stopped working at the restaurant, and I decided that I probably should get a adult person job. And
now you have enough experience writing that you have clips.
So yeah, I had done some things that were, quasi-credible. Oh, I went to work for the fashion designer that I interviewed for the magazine.
Full circle.
So I went to work for her, but they hired me as an in-house PR person. I didn't know at the time, because I just thought, well, I'm good with people, and I can write, and sure, I'll figure it out. Well, I was a terrible PR person. It was not my cup of tea. And I found that out very quickly. So I only worked there for about 9 months, and it was not a great situation, but I figured that out. I did learn a lot at that job. I had a boss who was constantly, I don't want to say throwing me to the wolves might be a bit extreme, but we would be in meetings that I did not think that I was leading, and he would sort of be like, okay, Dini, why don't you take it from here? And I would just like eyeballs wide, and I'm like, what? And so I just was constantly having to just like up and run and sort of like bullshit my way through these presentations and meetings, which was...
It's actually a good skill.
Yeah, terrifying at the time, but actually turned out to be a great thing because I guess I was convincing enough to where I didn't sound like an idiot, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe not. But anyway, so I went to work with a fashion designer. I did that for about 9 months. And then I thought, okay, now I need something stable, something, and again, I remembered my promise back when I had been 25 years old, and I thought every single job I take now, it must be a job that makes me a better writer. So, but it also has to be a job that pays my rent and keeps me afloat, and at this point I was 26 years old, and I just never had enough money. I just never really felt like I always felt like I was living outside of my means.
Which is just New York, I feel like.
Yeah, which is New York to a degree. And also, it was difficult because when I was working at a bar, all of my contemporaries were getting interns at magazines. And so they had all this experience that I was incredibly intimidated by, because I thought, well, I've never worked in a magazine. I don't know anything about what that's like. I worked the front desk at some places, but I just had no idea. And there were so many people. I mean, this whole time that I was working at a bar, I was waiting on people. I was serving people that were my age, but were working these corporate jobs, and I just thought they had so much more experience than I did, and they knew so much more than I did. But I got a job as a fashion copywriter at Bloomingdale's.com. Like I had a friend of a friend worked there, and again, I guess my resume wasn't awful, and they gave me the job. And again, that I didn't have any copywriting experience, and I didn't intend to be a copywriter. But I thought, well, this way I get to work with words all day, and I get to play with sentence structure and tone, and this will be great. In retrospect, I sometimes wish I had done something like gone to work for a publishing company and sort of learned the ins and outs of publishing and that sort of thing, but that's just not the way it worked out. I thought, I have experience in fashion. I came from a fashion label. I did minimal copywriting there, but again, no one ever told me how you're supposed to be a copywriter. I kind of just learned on the job. Yeah. And I made so many mistakes when I worked at Bloomingdale's. I was really learning as I went, and they were very patient with me. But I worked there for about 2 years, and fashion copywriting, while it is consistent, it is also monotonous. And I was ready for a little more creative freedom. And so from there I went to Bon Appetit magazine. Again, sort of knew a person who passed my resume along. And cool. I was at Bon Appetit as a copywriter for 2.5 years, which was a great experience. And from there, I went to Vogue, and then I was the copy director at Vogue. So by that point, I felt, even when I was offered the position of copy director, I still was,
what does that mean exactly? So are you still writing, or are you editing at that point?
I am. I did everything.
Okay.
I was a team of one, and it basically means that I called all the shots when it came to the copy. So I worked with the marketing team. I was on the business side of the magazine, and I still freelance there and do this work as well. But direction, I guess the difference between direction and writing is that I do write and edit content, but I also have a lot of sort of accountability and responsibility to brainstorm and ideate and come up with concepts, creative concepts. So I would brainstorm with the whole team.
So that gave you that creative freedom you really didn't
Exactly.
have.
So it was great. But all this time, as much as I love, am grateful to have a marketable skill that I can make money from, that wasn't the only thing I wanted to do. So many people that I was working with there, like, that was their life. Their life was just working a desk job at Vogue, and that was it. And they had their hobbies and they had their families, but there were no other side projects, whereas
it wasn't hitting all your notes creatively.
Yeah, I've been working on side projects for a decade.
So you were blogging throughout that entire time.
So I've been blogging. I stopped blogging for a little bit at bloomingdales.com because they were sort of weird about you having side projects, or when I was there, at least they were. And I regret that I did that because I lost a ton of contacts. I lost a ton of momentum. And then when I re-entered the blogging world 2 years later, it has shifted dramatically.
Yeah.
And I did not expect that because who knew blogging? So that had changed so drastically that I didn't really know. And I never really felt like I caught back up. Because then once I started finding a rhythm, there became the super bloggers, and then bloggers were rising to like great fame. And I was sort of like, what? So that is something that I've definitely struggled with, as to how much time I allot to this blog and to my creative work. So I knew all this time, while all of this was happening, I knew that I wanted to write nonfiction. I knew that I wanted to write essays, writing about my life experiences, and writing about the people in it is just the thing that comes most naturally to me. I don't want to say that it's the thing that I'm best at, but it's the thing that I have most experience doing. And I'm passionate about it. It is truly the work that just lights me up like a flame.
Yeah.
And it is also agonizing, as I think as any writer would, any creator would agree, that there's just so much anguish and that you are constantly doubting yourself. And my brother sent me a meme once, and it said, being a writer is like riding a bike, except you're on fire and the bike's on fire and you're in hell.
That's so funny. Or it's like that quote, I think it's Joan Didion, of, I like having written, not writing.
Yeah. Well, the funny, maybe the messed up thing is that I actually enjoy the process of writing.
Yeah. I
I sometimes enjoy the process more than I enjoy the finished product. Because once I finish a piece, I want to forget about it and I want to move on.
Yeah.
I don't really want to relish in it. I feel like there's always so much more to be written. And so
I feel like that's how you know it's right.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when I'm writing, I am in hell. It is the most torturous experience, but I'm also
present,
like flying.
Yeah.
I love it so much. And because when you're writing, and what so often happens, you start and you put down a sentence and you're like, oh, this is so dumb. Nobody's going to want to read this. Oh my God, why are you a writer? I hate you. You're awful. You like immediately fall into this just hole of self-deprecation so quickly. But then you get past it. Mm-hmm. You slog through it, and you quiet the demons in your mind, and then when you nail that sentence or you nail that paragraph, it's the greatest gratification that I've ever had in my life. And so that is the thing. So I do enjoy the writing because I enjoy those tiny victories of when I actually am able to put into words the thing that I'm so desperate to say.
Yeah, like you get the inside of your brain out for other people to see.
And then you do it, and you manage to do it with the right structure and the right tone and the right words. And then you have to write another sentence. It's like so intense. But
do you still get satisfaction from that being seen and read and the reaction to it?
Oh my God, absolutely. Well, it's funny because when I was younger, I wanted to be a performer and I wanted to be in the spotlight.
Yeah. And
then this evolution happened where I realized I did not want to be in the spotlight. I then sort of became very uncomfortable being on stage. And I became uncomfortable in front of people. It's funny because I am a very social person and very talkative and animated, but the minute someone asks me to get up in front of people and start talking, I can do it, but I kind of prefer not to, which is so strange because I was not that way when I was younger. I was a total ham. I wanted to be the center of attention all the time.
Yeah.
And so when, I don't know, that evolution happened, and then I realized that being a writer, I was much more comfortable sort of taking my thoughts and ideas and crafting them behind the scenes. I lost my train of thought, but basically
You're getting seen in a different way. Like, we all as humans have the need to be seen.
Yes.
And so that I was asking if you still get the satisfaction from the work being out in the world.
Yes. And so, so that, I guess, was sort of what I kept these side projects, because while I enjoy copywriting and even the whole time I was at Vogue, I mean, my job at Vogue was the best desk job I've ever had in my life. I worked with outstanding people. It is an obviously outstanding brand. It was a very gratifying corporate job. But deep down, I didn't really ever want to work a corporate job. Like, I never even wanted to work a desk job. I just did because I knew that I had to.
Means to an end.
To live.
Yeah,
and
completely.
And now I've made a career of being a copy director, which I love, because I work with small brands and startups, and I still work with Condé Nast a lot, and I get to develop cool ideas, and they actually have money to do things with them, and that is really fun. So that has definitely become a part of my identity, is like working with brands and marketing and branded content and that kind of thing. But it all leads back.
It allows you to do the other work.
It allows me to do the other work, and it also always comes back to a story. And that, I think, is why I was able to love being a copywriter and director so much, is because it doesn't matter if I'm selling soap or cars or lipstick, if there's a charity involved or not. Everybody just wants a story. And, the way that you craft that for a marketing campaign or for a novel is equally as important.
Yeah.
And granted, they're very different. I mean, obviously the sort of intricacies of that work is very, very different. But at the end of the day, it's just about people just want to connect. And that, for me, is all I want in life is to connect with people. It's like the thing. I don't know why. I have no idea. You would think that maybe I'd had some sort of experience in my past where I was deprived of connection.
I think that's human nature. I mean, that's all I want too.
Yeah.
I think we all just want to be seen and connected, because that's when we're most present and when we're connecting. I mean, that's why I do this, is because for the 2 hours that I'm doing this, I'm with someone with our phones off, and I have to pay attention, because if I start to not pay attention, I sound stupid. we lose the train of whatever this is, wherever this is going. So it forces us to be present and connect. And that's, I think, what we're meant to do as human beings, is that's why we're here.
Yeah. And that for me is the gratification of, and that's it. It's everything I write, there are always people that don't care, and there's people that don't like it, and there are people that think it's stupid. And, actually, I don't know if we talked about this on Instagram, but when I never read the comments on anything, I just have learned better, because you cannot please everyone. It's a shame that there are so many internet trolls. And, I'm not even sort of well known enough to be attacked enough, but it doesn't matter. Even on tiny little levels, people still want to say mean things. People will go out of their way to write a negative comment. It's well, if you don't like it,
just be quiet.
You don't have to read it.
Talk about what you love. Keep quiet about what you don't.
That has never made sense to me. But anyway, that's the world we live in. But I did have to laugh because when the Soul Tattoo article came out, Refinery 29 had posted it on their Facebook page, and so it pops up in my feed and I see it, and I did not purposefully read the comments, but so some of them just populate up top. One of them just said, "Snore
Oh my God.
And I was like, oh, I mean, at least it wasn't super hateful, even though I was like, I can't believe this person, like, actually took the time to type that. But I was like, that is kind of a funny thing to say, I guess, if you didn't like it. She thought it was boring, obviously. But
she's not winning any creative writing awards for that comment.
Yeah, right. But it could have been much worse. But anyway, I guess my point is, this whole time that I have been working corporately, and even now as a full-time freelancer, you know, my ultimate goal has always been to write essays. I hope that one day I can write a longer form piece. I have not learned really how to do that yet. But while I was at Bon Appetit and at Vogue, I did start publishing essays, and that was kind of my little baby steps. And then in 2015, I published an essay in the Modern Love column.
I was just gonna talk about that.
Yeah,
Perfect.
and that was a major...
Yeah, what was that moment like for you?
Oh my gosh.
First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
It's so good, and everyone needs to read it. And there's even like an animated little video with you narrating it, right?
Yeah,
and it's wonderful.
That was really
so
fun to do.
good.
It was so fun that they wanted to do the video animation.
It's wonderful. We'll have the link in the show notes.
Oh, thank you.
What was that experience like, editing it and
oh my God,
getting it published?
This was I guess in 2014, I had actually never even heard of Modern Love, which I'm so embarrassed to say that. And my husband...
I was going to ask if it was a dream of yours, because...
It wasn't at all. I just knew... So I had been wanting to tell that story for a very long time, because it happened
Such a good
back
story.
in 2009 or something. I mean, it happened for over the course of 3 years, but my grandmother passed away in 2009, I believe. And maybe it was 8. Maybe my grandmother... Anyway, these are the reasons I like, Mom, what year did Granny and Grandpa pass away?
Yeah.
But I had been wanting to tell that story for a very long time, and I had a very hard time doing it because, you know, when you're just too close to a situation or a circumstance, like, you can't pull back enough to have perspective and to really help other people understand the perspective of the situation. And so I had started it multiple times, and I finally... It was December of 2014. 2014 was a crazy, crazy year for me because I started at Vogue. My husband started a new job on Broadway. We started the same week, actually, at our new jobs, which were, you know, complete different schedules. And then we got married in 2014, so we were planning a wedding, and there was just
like a whole nother full-time job.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. It was just so much happening, and I had really not been focusing on my writing in the way that I wanted to, because I was always sort of putzing around. Sometimes I would pull up a Word document, and even if I was slammed at work, if I had 5 minutes, I would pull up my document and I would jot down a couple of things, inspirations or thoughts that I was having, or dialogue that I wanted to pull back into a story, and I would minimize it. And sometimes that was all I got to do. Sometimes a lot of my work is waiting for other people to approve something or to give me a direction on something. And so if I had a moment like that, I would jot down some things. So by the end of 2014, I was like fed up with how little I had focused on my creative writing that year. And I was like, forget about it. I'm going to write this story. I'm sick of it. I'm going to write this story. I've got to tell it. The time is now. And thankfully, December in the publishing industry is very slow. And I should probably not be saying that on air, but if you work in publishing, you probably know that December is slow because the January and the February books are never as big as the holiday, you know, as the, and obviously at Vogue, the September issue is massive. So our summer at Vogue is insane because we're prepping for September, but then, you know, by the time you get to December, people are winding down.
And I think in a lot of careers,
and you've got all the holidays and people are ready to take vacation. So I started writing this essay, and I just wrote and revised it a million times, and I started, my poor friends, one of my very good friends, now she works at O Magazine, but at the time she was at Bust, and she read it for me. One of my very good friends is now a managing editor at Playboy, but he used to be the managing editor at Paper. And then a handful of other writer friends of mine, I just would email them and be like, please read this. Please give me your feedback. Another one of my girlfriends, she, at the time...
This is about the Modern Love piece.
The Modern Love piece, yeah. At the time, she was a managing editor at Harper's Bazaar. And so every writer person that had experience editing, had an objective eye, and was able to help people craft stories, basically. Yeah. I was like, please. I asked them too many times to read it and edit it, but they all were amazing, and they gave me amazing feedback. And it basically took me 4 months.
So it almost became this beautiful collage of like really talented writers' opinions on your piece.
Absolutely.
And starting with such a beautiful story.
And I feel like comedians do this a lot, which is why I love listening to comedians tell stories about their process. And
me too.
And
they workshop things.
Yeah, and I did the same thing. I would tell this story about my grandmother and about Nick at parties. And I would take these mental notes about when people laughed and when they felt endeared.
How'd that do?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like you could tell when people were really moved, or you could tell when something they didn't really care.
Storytelling.
Yeah, and so I started to take mental notes on that, which actually, so by the time I wrote it, I had a pretty good idea of the beats that had to make the story. You know, people love this part or whatever, and so I submit it, I submit it because what I was saying earlier.
Because you didn't know what the...
Yeah, I didn't know about it. And I was, again, telling the story to a friend at a party. And she said, oh my God, this sounds like a Modern Love piece. And I was like, what is that? And she's like, oh my God, the New York Times. Like, you have to read it. You would love it. And I'm like, I'm an idiot. I don't know why I don't know about this. And obviously I looked it up. And what I had done over the course of those 4 months while I was writing the piece is that I had just... basically stalked the entire Modern Love column, and I had read so many pieces, and I wanted to edit the essay in a way that was so easy for them to say yes. So I mimicked their structure.
Oh, that's so smart.
Because I just thought, well, if they generally do 2 to 3 sentences in a paragraph, I'm going to do 2 to 3 sentences in a paragraph. And also just sort of studying the tone of all the stories, because they're not overly dramatic. They're just great stories. Yeah. And so I did that, and I submit it, and I did not expect... Again, you put these things out into the world, and you don't really expect anything to happen. I had my backups. I had these other publications that I thought maybe I could submit it to if the New York Times said no. And then I get an email from Dan Jones, I want to say it was in February, and it pops up in my inbox, and I'm at work. And, you open the email, and they're like, oh, we'd love to publish this story. We don't have anything quite like it. Thank you.
Wow.
And, you look at the email, and then you sort of look around to be is this real? And then I read it again and again, just to make sure. I'm like, I think he said yes. I just want to make sure. And then that was it. It was just, I called my brother, because my brother is a huge champion of mine, and always challenging me to write better and write more and dig deeper.
What does he do?
He is a law professor.
Okay.
But he writes a lot. He writes academic papers. He is also just publishing his first book.
Oh, cool.
It's about privacy and data, all things that I do not write about.
Yeah. Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. But I called him and obviously called my mom, because it was just such a special story. It was... Everybody was so obsessed with my grandmother. She was so wonderful.
What a beautiful moment for your family, because it was about your grandmother, and then you're getting, this huge opportunity as a writer that people dream of. And that was, like, I know for me, like, this is a completely on a much smaller scale, but I think sometimes we need these moments or these weird awards, or like when I got my book deal, it was like, oh, I can keep going with this, It was
Someone said this was okay.
Yeah, it legitimized my work in a way that not everyone needs, but I needed, especially at the time, to be like, oh, I should do this thing that's a hobby on the side, because somebody else says that it's okay,
Yeah, I know. And what was I going to say about that? A couple of things that made me think of is I've just started reading Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott.
Oh, so good.
And my friend Molly, who is one of the girls that helped me edit the Modern Love essay, she recommended it to me, and I want to say it's what I just read, and she said something about seeing your work in print it's like it's proof that you're alive or something like that. It's proof that you exist. And I don't know, I love that. And I also, this is sort of deviating, but I am almost positive it was on this podcast with Josh Radnor where he talks about the cultural gatekeepers and how people and how he sort of refused to believe that good art had to be sad or extreme or whatever. And anyway, that really spoke with me.
Elizabeth Gilbert talks about that in Big Magic too.
Oh, she does.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think so.
Have
you seen the Joan Didion documentary yet?
I haven't.
I think
I've
really
heard about
like it.
Yeah,
yeah,
but I
it's
haven't
really
seen
good.
it yet.
You would like it a lot.
Yeah.
Also, while you were talking about the beginning of your story, I kept thinking about Frances Ha.
No.
You haven't seen it?
I'm a really, really bad movie watcher. My husband hates this about me.
Okay, well, anyway, it's one of my favorite movies. I love Greta Gerwig, and her newest movie,
I heard it was great.
Lady Bird. I haven't seen it yet, but it reminds me of what we were talking about at the beginning, too, about... So she is from Sacramento, and so this movie, Lady Bird, I just listened to the Fresh Air episode of Terry Gross interviewing her as I was walking back here. But basically, she goes back to Sacramento and shoots this movie there and goes back to her hometown, and she's, lived in New York. And it talks about that really special, interesting thing of you grew up in this place, you had to leave it, but coming back is so interesting and complicated, and the relationship with a girl and her mother and shopping and all the things we were talking about. And so anyway, I'm like dying to see it, and I feel like and Frances Ha it's wonderful. It's so good. It's all black and white, and she co-wrote it and stars in it, and it's about a dancer moving to New York, and there's this line in the movie that's one of my favorite lines ever, where she says, somebody asks, oh, what do you do for a living, as we do in America? And she was like, it's complicated. And the person's like, why? And she's like, well, because what you do is hard to understand. And she's like, no, because I don't really do it. And she was a dancer. So it was just kind of that same thing of when you're in your 20s trying to navigate what is it that you're doing, getting clarity on what it is that you want to do and focusing on it. And then once you kind of figure it out, you're not sure because you don't have the opportunity to do it professionally and navigating that. And so that's why I think what you were saying, it was so windy and so twisty and turny.
So long, I'm sorry.
No, it was amazing.
It's a long story.
But I think it's really relatable because... it's so inspiring for me to hear your winding journey. I hate that word. It's so overused. But it
is definitely a journey.
Your interesting trajectory of how you got to what you're doing now. And anyway, I just think it's inspiring.
And I feel like I haven't even made a dent is the reality in it. I feel as much... I'm so honored to be here and to be on this podcast, but, the reality is I don't feel like I have done anything worth talking about at this point,
And that's really great for you to say, too, because to me, you're like this so prolific and doing such great work, and I connect with you so much, and I think there are people, and I don't feel like I've done anything, but I think there are people listening who'd be like, oh, podcast's pretty cool, so it's just like it's all this internal dialogue that we have and it goes back to us just not feeling good enough and wanting to connect and like wanting to be okay in the world.
Syndrome of being like, when is someone going to realize that I'm actually like a total idiot? I am a garbage woman, and not in the sense of that sounds terrible.
Picking up trash.
Not in the sense of, I don't mean it like that at all. As in just
just the self-talk that we have that can be so negative.
Yeah, and because in my mind, I have really big ideas of what I want to do. I have these great goals that I want to accomplish with my writing, and so I'm like, I'm currently working on a collection of essays. I'm currently dabbling in fiction, which is something that I am probably not very good at. But, it feels like I'm just taking my first few breaths.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, I have a million questions I want to ask you, and I feel like we should talk about I want to know about your writing processes and rituals and all of that. What was the transition to becoming a freelancer fully like, and how did you handle that mentally?
Great question. So I had been sort of fantasizing about being a freelancer, which I also felt like a crazy person for doing because I had so much stability and, 401k.
Yeah.
And my dad would be very proud about that.
I'm like in that right now.
Yeah.
So
and it's great. Look, there is
it's
lot
hard
to be said for, and I worked a job that I went in at 8:45 or 9. I left between 5 and 6, and I did not think about work until the next day. And there's a lot to be said for that. Again, that was the best desk job I ever had. But, my husband took a Broadway tour, and we gave up our apartment in Brooklyn because we just felt like there was no point in paying the rent on an apartment that he would not set foot in for nearly 10 months. But anyway, so we listened to a ton of You Made It Weird, which I also know you listen to.
Yeah, I was just at Pete's wedding.
Oh, I saw that! Mm-hmm. Oh my god, how do you know Valerie?
She did my podcast.
Oh my
I
God,
just get people to be friends with me.
I also follow her.
She's the best.
Yeah, she seems adorable.
Yeah,
she seems like a real cutie.
The like one of the coolest.
And
people
I love Pete Holmes so much that I just refuse to believe that he would be with anyone other than like an amazing woman.
It would be such a bummer.
Yeah, I love You Made It Weird is one of those podcasts that I have gone all the way back to the beginning and listened to. Not all of them because there's a lot, but I have listened to a lot of the early ones. Yeah. Anyway, we always listen to a couple of episodes of You Made It Weird, and they can be pretty long. They can be quite lengthy,
super long,
which is great. We listened to the one he did with Joel Furman, Dr. Furman, who writes Eat to Live. Mm-hmm. And the whole ride we had been, sometimes when you're taking a road trip, you're like, I just want some kind of like just trashy fast food, because we never eat fast food, ever. And occasionally we'll be like, oh my God, because he used to eat Taco Bell as a kid. He's like, we need to go to Taco Bell. So this whole trip, we're driving, and we were like, let's definitely stop by Taco Bell. We're going to be so disgusting. We are going to be so gross and just eat like the cheesiest, most processed,
and then you listen to
chemical-based quesadilla. And then we listened to that episode, and my husband was like, I can't go to Taco Bell after that.
That's so funny.
Yeah, so it really...
I think that was the one. Val told me that like he was a little bit intense. Like she told me like, don't listen to it. It's not going to be good for you. Like don't listen to it.
Funny.
Like
I love it. It's my favorite podcast.
Me too. But that episode, she was like, it's not going to be good for you.
But I love Fresh Air, and
me too.
I always want to listen to it.
Like my
She's
everything.
amazing, and my husband, he's like, I don't really like her voice. I'm like, what? Come on. He's like, He's very sensitive to sound.
That can be, he has misophonia. Have you heard of that?
No.
It literally is translated as hatred of sounds, and it's it's an actual condition where some people have like this aversion to certain sounds. Like I think I have it, like I hate the sound of people eating hard candy, and like there's certain sounds that like make me cringe.
I would not be surprised if he had that, because as a musician, obviously his ears, like his sound is everything to him, and so there are just certain noises that he cannot handle.
Yeah.
I mean, and a lot of them are sound. I mean, I love Terry Gross's voice, but I'm like, okay, I respect your opinion. But so I listen to Fresh Air on my own all the time.
My friend Jess Mernan has a podcast, and she did an entire episode on misophonia because she has it so much. And there was a documentary about it, and she had the guy who made the documentary.
I have to watch that.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. I'll send you
a lot of the sounds that he hates are objectively offensive sounds, like if there's like a screeching or like the pulling of a chair across the floor, like things like this, but his reaction is so visceral, whereas I sort of think that's unpleasant, but he just skin crawls.
That's so interesting.
But anyway,
okay, writing processes.
Freelance. I went freelance.
Oh yeah, freelance.
From Vogue, because this seemed like the best opportunity to do it. My husband was going to be working full time, and I felt like it was now or never, because I had always been too afraid to be a freelancer when I lived in New York, because I was always trying to keep my head above water. I was always worried about how I was going to pay my rent. And to be fair, I probably could have done it if I were more financially conscious.
Yeah.
And I think, just knowing me, I knew that I needed a little bit of this safety net, which was my husband having a job.
Yeah.
And we gave up our apartment, so I didn't have a rent to pay. So for the first time in my life, I had very little overhead. I pay for 1 billion plane tickets. That's the majority of where my money goes.
That's your rent.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. That is my rent. And then, of course, the transportation, often to and from the airport and getting around the city. I mean, I was in LA for a month without a car. I should probably own stock in Lyft because I just paid so much money to get around there. But I needed that security of knowing that we wouldn't starve because at least my husband would be making a regular paycheck.
Yeah.
And so I took the opportunity to go freelance. I feel so fortunate to
So how long ago was this?
That was September of last year.
Okay.
So this was 15 months ago, basically. And we moved out of our apartment. We have some very dear friends that let us stay with them for a month while I finished up at Vogue, and Tim was, because we had to move out over Labor Day weekend, just logistically, and we stayed with them for a month in Brooklyn, and then my husband flew to San Francisco, and I met him there a week later, and that began my freelance life and living out of a suitcase for 15 months, and it was hard at first. I mean, even though I was so excited, I get to San Francisco, and that was my first city, the first city of the tour. That was where his show opened on the tour, and I was, had gone, even though this was something that I had wanted for years, was to have the flexibility of being a freelancer. But it was October at this point, so things were really starting to slow down in my industries. And it just takes a while. Like, it takes a minute to, and I was all over it. I mean, I was emailing every single person I knew that I'm a freelancer now, and I'm free for work, and here's my website, and here's my resume, and, just shouting from the rooftops. But even still, it takes time, because people will think of you when the time is right, but it might not be on your timeline. And I'm having a bit of a hard time because for the first time, I'm not going into my office every day. Right. And that was
finding a new routine.
Yeah. That was part of my ritual. I loved my coworkers at Vogue. They were like part of my family. And, every morning we would have our coffee and kind of catch up as we were checking our emails and, thrust into the day together. And I didn't have them, and I genuinely miss them. I would email them and be like, I don't think it's normal for people to miss their corporate coworkers as much as I miss you guys.
Yeah.
And it was a new routine. I didn't have anywhere I had to be, and I wanted to do work, but there wasn't really enough work. I had a few projects from Vogue that I got to finish up for a couple of months. So anyway, it was a tough transition. I wasn't nuts about San Francisco. I missed Brooklyn. I just missed the conveniences of New York. And then we go to LA, and we were there for a month, and then basically the tour, sort of from that moment forward, the tour was like week by week by week. So finding a process and a rhythm has been, it's like an art within itself, because I was so rarely in the same place for more than a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, even now, 15 months later, the longest I've been in one city is 4 weeks.
Wow.
In 15 months. So once after we left LA, it was, a week in San Diego, a week in Denver, a week in Seattle, a week in Salt Lake City. Then it was Christmas. Then it was, I was home for a little bit, and then we were all over the place. Which
sounds very exciting, but it's probably very challenging in any sort of routine and career.
It is. And freelancing, eventually it picked up. I feel like once people came back from the new year, I slowly started getting clients. And I also am just so grateful because I don't know if you have people like this in your life, but they're almost just like your guardian angels. They're your
cheerleaders.
Yeah, just like your champions, and for whatever reason, they just want to help. They just are constantly I mean, one of them is my associate publisher of Vogue, this woman named Kim Fastingberg, and she is amazing. And she's just one of those people that is always recommending me for work. I mean, she's always passing my name along.
Great.
And it's one of those things where it's like she has, I mean, yeah, she likes me and I like her very much, but you know, she really has been such a champion. And I have, so Laura, who actually was the editor on my soul tattoo piece for Refinery, she's another one of those people who just has always, like champion my work and whatever she can do to facilitate or to help. And she's also an amazing editor, and I am so grateful to her for that. But yeah, I don't know. I just have been very lucky to have those handful of people that are constantly being like, you're doing great, and you know, of course, like, let's get you this job, or let's publish this, or whatever. And that was helpful. So yeah, the routine is, I have to say, it's so different. The routine is no routine. I do sometimes just have to force myself to sit down and slog through the shit. I mean, the great thing and the difficult thing is now I have an actual steady freelance career, but now I have to balance my time between doing the work that makes me money and then writing the creative work that, you know, whereas before I was doing the creative work on the side, but I was still getting a regular paycheck every 2 weeks. Now I'm having to make sure that I keep up with all of and I have multiple clients, which is so great, but you know, keeping up with all of my clients and the multiple deadlines, and then of course just chasing your invoices and then finding more work stuff. And all of that stuff, making sure that, you know, just life stuff, and then balancing that with carving out time to be creative. And sometimes I'm in a city that I'm, you know, sometimes it's just hard to focus. I think that's probably the biggest challenge is, my husband and I have gotten really good about every new city we get to, about sort of immediately jumping into our routine. Like we get to a place, we immediately unpack everything. We put all of our toiletries in the bathroom. We hang up our clothes, and then
make yourself a little home.
Yeah, we do, because you have to, or else I travel with full-size beauty products, because it's like the one constant that I have in every city. Yeah. You know, it's tough. But I have always thrived in change, and I like new projects, and I like changing spaces, and so it has worked in my favor. It's only been in the last 2 months or so that I'm like, oh my God, I have got to get my own bedroom. I've got to have my own bathroom again, you know?
Yeah. So is the tour continuing?
So, no, the Broadway show ended in July, and then we took
What was the show? Tell everyone the show that.
Oh yeah, it was Hedwig and the Angry Inch.
Very cool.
And it was it's an amazing show. It's truly very special. And that was talk about journey. That was a very long journey. I mean, he got the call to see if he was interested in joining the band on stage in 2013.
So he plays
So the show, there's only 6 people on stage throughout the entire show, and there's Hedwig and Hartzog, who are the 2 main characters, who are actors and have amazing voices, and then there are 4 band members, and they play a live show. So they play, I think it's 11 or 12 songs. And so my husband his character's name was Krzysztof. I don't even know if I pronounced that right. And he plays electric guitar in the show, and so he was the guitar player. And it's such a special show, and it was so amazing to be a part of that. And you know, the show on Broadway kicked off with Neil Patrick Harris, and then it was Andrew Rannells, and then it was Michael C. Hall, and then John Cameron Mitchell came back, and then Darren Criss, and then Taye Diggs. And
I was gonna say, I knew Taye Diggs was in it.
Yeah, so he was like the final Hedwig. And so then the show ended, and we were still living in New York, and that was sort of like a throwaway year after that. And then the tour started. So it was 10 months of touring. It ended in July. And July and August, we both sort of, at that point, freelancing was going pretty well for me. So I we would go to like our beach house, which I'm again so grateful to have this beach house that we could go work at. And I continued to travel a bit, and my husband started working on so he just in September released his first ambient record. He's an ambient composer. Cool. And it's beautiful. It's called Now Is the Last Best Time.
Cool.
And yeah, it is about the Alzheimer's caregiver experience, because his mother has been caring for her husband, who has had Alzheimer's for quite some time. And obviously with my grandmother, it's a very important theme that has run through our relationship. But it's a beautiful ambient record. And so in July...
So what does that mean? It's ambient music for caregivers? Or that's
No, it's just that the inspiration for the record was about the experience that... It really never ceases to amaze me. I mean, obviously I'm biased because I think that he's magnificent. But it is amazing to me because, my medium is words. And so... And before that, it was dance. It was choreography. And so in a way, I understand how you translate emotion. Like for me, it was translating emotion through my body. And now it's translating emotion through text. But to see him, he's got all these pedals, all this gear. And he's got his guitar. And he's got all the microphone and his chords and all these things. And to see him work, it's like a mad scientist. It's crazy. And to see him create sound that can evoke an emotion that, I don't know, and I've always been kind of a sucker for that type of music, for instrumental music. And I was a big fan of the album Leaf when I was younger, and have always been a fan of instrumental music as a dancer, I guess. But anyway, so yeah, the album itself is all about kind of like evoking that emotion.
That's great.
That you experience as she was a full-time caregiver for her husband. Anyway, so when we went, July the show ends, we went and just kind of worked on our own projects. He started working on a new record. I was just freelancing and writing, and it was so cute. I told him I was having a really hard time getting motivated to start doing some of my creative writing, and I wish I had more exercises. And so he took a pack of note cards and he wrote writing prompts for me, like 30 writing prompts. Yeah. And he would give them to me every morning. Oh, and he'd be like,
so good. And
he's like, it doesn't matter how long you do it. It can be 10 minutes. It can be an hour, So, so that was, I guess, part of my process for a little bit. So supportive. And
do you listen to ambient music while you write? Do you listen to music?
I listen to a lot of Max Richter. When I write. I listen to my husband's record when I travel, when I fly. It's very... So his sort of the music that he is naturally inclined to create is very dreamy and ethereal. It's beautiful.
Cool. I'm so excited to listen.
Yeah. This record is... Some of it is a bit dark, but it's still very beautiful. But the what he usually does is just really... sort of dreamscapey type.
Cool.
That sounds cheesy. It's not cheesy. It's very good.
No,
but,
that's so cool.
So where was I going with that?
So what you're doing now? Are you going to put roots down somewhere,
right.
Or are you guys going to keep traveling?
So he just finished a tour with Tegan and Sarah. He cool. He played with them for the con.
I love them.
Yeah, they're amazing, and also so
lovely
ladies. And so he played it was like a 5-week tour, I guess. So he just finished that a couple of days ago. And now we have to decide where we want to live.
Come to New York. Live in New York. So we
well, what I think we're basically torn between LA and going and having a house in upstate New York.
Cool.
And I don't think I can come back to New York because sort of what you were saying earlier about like it being an adult playground for children. The minute I left, I realized that I am the type of person that it's just I have to accept it. It is my cross to bear. If there is a bright, shiny toy to play with, I will go to it.
It's very distracting.
It is so distracting, and this is a whole other thing. I was very fearful of leaving New York for years. And I think a lot of people get in this
I'm
place.
Fearful, and I just got here.
Well, and New York has this way of just sinking its teeth into you, and
it's like
you're like,
upside down.
You're like, I hate it, but I like it, you know? And it has this way of convincing you that no place is going to be as good.
Yeah.
Nowhere else is as good. And to be honest, I have spent 15 months traveling the country, and I still believe that New York City is the greatest city in America. That is not to say that there are not tons of other amazing cities. And that was something that I truly did need to see for myself, because I had kind of been brainwashed into thinking that New York City was the only city, and it was, you know, the only place to be, and who will I be without New York City? And
it becomes part of your identity.
Absolutely. And it was so deeply ingrained into my identity. I had only lived in New York as an adult woman. I moved here, you know, when I was 22, and I left when I was 33. And I was so afraid of who I would become when I left, which is, in hindsight, a crazy thought. Like, I had this idea that I would leave New York a writer and that I would somehow end up like an architect. Like, no, I'm still the same person. I still do the same things. I still like the same things.
You can take the girl out of New York, and you can't take New York out of the
Right,
girl.
exactly. And I went to all these amazing cities, and I realized, like, there's the same type of pockets of people in every metropolitan city. I mean, even in Salt Lake City, I was like, oh, I know that. I know these people. Like, these are my people, you know? And I found that all over America. So it did that was great. But I also left New York, and for the first time in a very long time, I could hear my thoughts. I could sit in silence.
I wrote that down as something I read in one of your essays.
Oh, really? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't even know where I wrote that. But I could hear my thoughts, and I liked it. I felt, for the first time in a long time, that I had reconnected with, and this has actually, a lot of this I realized after my reading with Ash and getting my soul tattoo, is that
previous podcast guest.
Yes. And I realized that towards my end of my time in New York, I had just completely lost the connection to myself. I didn't hear my gut anymore, which was very strange, because my whole life I always really prided myself on following my gut and my heart. Like, I never made decisions really from a logical perspective ever. I always made them because deep down in my gut I just knew that this was right for me, you know, that this was going to make me happy, or at least it would take me in the right direction to discover something else. And I don't know, and I think this is a thing that happens as you get older. In general, you become more afraid of risk because you have more at stake, because you've worked so long to accomplish a certain thing. And I had genuinely worked very hard to accomplish a particular life that I had been living in New York, but I had also completely lost this this connection to the things that I wanted. I couldn't, if someone had asked me, what do you truly want, I would have sort of blurted out a billion things, and I wouldn't have been able to decipher which ones I wanted more or less. I just didn't know, and I knew that I needed to leave New York for perspective. I knew I needed a break, and I was so afraid of leaving because I thought that I would lose all of my inspiration when I left New York, because New York is such an inspiring place, and the people are so, you know, yes, they're individually, so many of the people that reside in New York are magnetic and exceptional people, because you have to have this sort of gumption, is what my old boss used to call it, to the gall to even try to exist and succeed. But as a collective energy, you know, the people make the city so radiant, and it's just like sparks, you know?
Yeah.
And I was so afraid of leaving that. I was so afraid of not having that inspiration. But then I left, and I thought, oh, you know what? This is actually really good for me, because I'm just the type of person who will never stop chasing the thing. And I have to be forced to be alone. I have to be and I love to be alone. I don't hate being alone. I genuinely enjoy being... I
relate to that so much.
Yeah. But I also love people. I mean, this is, again, like connection, you know, coming back to... And New York City, there's no better place than to connect with a billion people every day. You're walking down the street and you're connecting with...
There's an event, there's a thing to go to, and I think what I've noticed from being here is that people want to say yes more and go to things, because I think we live in such small spaces. that we want to be out and doing things, and it costs so much to live here that we're like, okay, let's actually take advantage of it. And it's so funny that we're having this conversation because I've been feeling that same sense of distraction and just unfocused. And that's something that, like, before I moved to New York, I was still feeling that, like, sense of being a master of none and a little bit, you know, scattered. And then when I moved here, I felt that even more. And I thought, oh, maybe it's just because I just moved. I need to get grounded and, like, figure out my life here. And it's starting to come together a little bit. And I think the seasons changing have helped. But for the most part, it's just very distracting because there's 1,000 coffee shops I could go work from. There's 1 million co-working spaces. There's 1 million, like, things I could wear and do and eat that it's just, like, my willpower is going to my decision-making and not my work. Yeah. And it's just making me feel a bit
and being new like you are, you still you have so much to experience. Like, even at 33, I at least had, I mean, God, just walking down the street, I was like, I used to hang out at that bar when I was 23. I've been to that Mexican restaurant. I used to get pizza at this place. You know, when I was 23 and 24 years old, all I did was hang out in this area. Like, this was my place. And then, you know, I lived on the Upper East Side, and I lived in Fort Greene, and I lived on First and First, and, you know, then I lived in Williamsburg. And so I at least felt like I'd had my places. I had my favorite spots. I had my favorite restaurants.
And I was like still figuring it out.
And if I were in your shoes, oh my God, my brain would explode every day. There's too much to see.
There's too much, and it's amazing, and I love it. But so what I wrote down was from your essay on self-care, which I loved, and I'll post about it. But I think you kind of covered a lot of the notes in it. But I wrote down, you wrote about creating space for yourself, and you said that for the first time in years you could hear your thoughts and you learned to focus your energy differently. So where are you with that now? You know, with I wrote this down, but I relate to that deeply, like I said. And you also said, I think in that same essay, which I thought was so great, you said you decided to treat yourself with more compassion and kindness, which in turn would help you do that for others. And I thought that was so brilliant. And this was another thing I wrote down from that. And it basically, like, annotated the entire thing, apparently, but it was so good. You said, maybe I ought to stop running from whatever fears and insecurities I have yet to realize because they manifest themselves unconsciously in my bad behavior, and start confronting them. Maybe I should start this journey and have a little patience for myself. Things could only go up from here. So where are you with that now? Like, when you wrote that, I think it was maybe almost a year ago?
Or maybe not that long ago. But, yeah, again, I know journey is the word we keep using.
I know, it's like a good word, but I hate it.
Yeah, I know.
Vocabulary.
We need to think. I know, I'm a copywriter. I should be able to come up with a better word.
Come back to us.
Yeah.
It's in the subtitle of my book, and I hate it.
I just realized so much about myself when I left New York. And not that everybody has to leave New York, but I personally had to get away from this life. And I just needed to be with myself for a bit. And I realized that I had been using so much energy here to exist, to get on the subway at rush hour, which I have always hated. It's always been something that made my blood boil. Some people, I mean, nobody likes it, I think, but some people tolerate it. And I got to a point where I had been tolerating so much that I genuinely hated, that it had absorbed all of my energy, and I didn't have energy to give to strangers anymore, and I hated that. And when I left New York, I don't know, it was just like space opened up, and I had patience all of a sudden I had patience to pull back when I was lit up. You know, I had patience to talk myself off the ledge on my own. I had, I don't know, having space to recognize my own thoughts. It almost sounds like an active meditation in a way, but
it's mindfulness.
Yeah, it was just the first time that I had
white space.
Yes. extra space.
Yeah.
I didn't have that for so long when I lived here, because between work and then of course in my free time, I always felt very guilty about, like, like I said, I'm a very bad movie watcher, because my thought is, if I have enough time to watch a movie, then I should be writing. Like, I should be working on my stories. I should be working on this. And so it was very hard for me to relax. And so I reference, I think, in that self-care piece about my friend Missy, who told me to hold myself with compassion. And she said this to me at a time in my life when I was acting like a maniac. And I was being very hard on myself, because I was being very selfish, and I was just kind of like a hot wire at this moment in my life. And she was like, hold yourself with compassion. I'm like, I don't know what that means. And I didn't get it, and it made me angry, because I was like, I don't understand this like crazy cosmic bullshit that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And one day it just clicked that if I just am a little nicer to myself, like, why am I being so mean? And it's not even conscious. I didn't even know I was doing it, but then the moment I sort of was like, give yourself a break. Or also just slow down.
Yeah. Don't
try to fill every second of your day with something. Be okay with being
This is so
alone.
what I need to hear right now.
Yeah. And a lot of it, because I was a dancer, I think I just am very connected to physical activity, and it really is a very therapeutic thing for me. If I go more than like 3 days without sweating in a workout, it makes me feel. I also just, as you could probably tell, I'm a very high energy person and have a lot of dopamine probably coursing through my brain. And, I had just been running, and I thought, and a lot of this I learned, in yoga, is just learn how to be uncomfortable a little more. And I think, especially in New York, you're constantly given an opportunity to escape from anything, from your thoughts,
tap out. You can look at your phone, you can go to a thing, you can eat a thing,
every second,
drink, you can
So I realized when we started the Hedwig tour that I was basically going to be in situations constantly that I had no control over. That I was going to be traveling so frequently that there were going to be plane delays, and there were going to be canceled flights, and there were
Which is actually so healthy.
Yeah, it is. Well, and especially because, not again in New York, but we have everything that we want and need at our disposal all the time. It's very rare. I mean, I remember, God, when I moved here in the early 2000s. I remember a time when you could not catch a cab. And if you couldn't catch a cab, then you had to walk to the subway in the rain. And, if you didn't have cash to pay for your cab, you had to ask your cab. Oh my God, you had to ask your cab driver to pull over and hope that he didn't leave you, and you had to run into an ATM and you had to get cash. Like, there was no card reader.
Oh my gosh.
And so, I don't know, just things have accelerated so much.
I don't even know how I would live here without a phone.
Oh my God.
Like,
I think how would I now? How would I get around without Google Maps?
I would have no idea how to, I mean, it's still a struggle. I would have no idea how to use the subway or how to do anything. Like, I couldn't have moved here back then. It was such a
different, it was so different. I mean, gosh, if you didn't know what subway you were supposed to take to get somewhere, you had to pop into a deli and ask someone, like, hey, I need to get to 86th Street, like, what stop do I take? Where do I go? But anyway, I guess when the tour started, I just realized there was going to be a lot of situations that I didn't have control over. I was sleeping in so many different places. Sometimes I would go and the room would be dirty or smelly or musty, or there'd be a ton of bright light, or it would be pitch black, or it would be very loud.
It forced you to let go of control.
It just forces you to be like, okay, this is the way it is. And I then, so at the time that I wrote that piece, I also had just finished reading The Power of Now, which was, incredible. And it was very difficult for me to get through, again, because I have a very hard time reading in the first place, and I kept having to read paragraphs over and over
Have you ever
again.
listened to that book?
Oh, no, I think you're the one that told me. Yeah, I did it, though.
It's very funny.
But
I'll play you a little bit, like, after this.
Okay, yeah. But the thing that really resonated with me was when he says, the reason that we are angry or frustrated or the reason we get worked up about sort of everyday things is because we are resisting the reality of what is. And
which is that we can't control.
Is we can't control it. And that the world is still functioning as it is around us, and it's just that we happen to see it through a particular lens.
Yeah.
And that just, like, smacked me in the face and thought, because I'm always trying, my whole life, my main prerogative is how can I equip myself with the right tools so that I can make life as easy and comfortable and happy as possible. And a lot of that, for me, comes back to just learning how to be more adaptable or learning how to be more patient or whatever it is. So that just really stuck with me because I was like, well, if I can learn to be okay with discomfort, then I'll probably be okay, like, for the rest of my life. I'm going to be so uncomfortable in so many situations throughout my life if I just, and I think about it, it's so cheesy to say that, you know, that it's, a lot of it is because yoga, but a lot of that, and also, you know, in fitness, I mean, there are times, I went through a period of time where I struggled with a clinical depression, and I remember I got really into running at that period of time, and I hated running. I hated it so much. I would have only run if someone were chasing me with a machete. But I was so sad at this point in my life that I wanted to do anything to alleviate the sadness, to feel anything other than sadness.
When was this in the trajectory of what we talked about?
It was around the time that I was 27 probably, which I look back now and I'm sort of like, now that I'm all like, you know, into this cosmic stuff, I'm like, well, maybe that was my Saturn return.
Yeah, I read
it
that
was a
down,
little early.
Saturn return.
Yeah, which might have been. But I went through, it was the weirdest thing. It was as though the fog came over me and it stayed there for 9 months and then it lifted. And it lifted gradually. It wasn't, but it probably started around the time I was 26 and I had been dating this guy for about 3 years, and I was so in love with him, and I so badly wanted us to be together. But deep down, I think I always knew that maybe he wasn't the right guy for me. I think I just was so enamored with, he was a very good boyfriend, and he was a very nice guy. And I think I was also just enamored with this idea of him to the point that I, like, didn't care that maybe it wasn't a perfect match. I just wanted, you know, as you do at times in your life. And
you wanted the support and the security.
I could envision a very happy life with him. I could envision, I don't know what it was. And I guess maybe part of it is because at that time I was still actually figuring out who I truly was. But, you know, you don't know that you're incomplete until you're older, and then you look back and you go, oh, well, I was not a whole person then. But at the time, you think, like, well, I feel pretty whole. I feel okay. And so I'd been with this guy for about 3 years, and we broke up because I realized one night when I was drunk, one of the only very, like, clarifying things or moments of clarity that I have probably had, I just had this epiphany, and I was like, you know what? He doesn't love me the way that I want to be loved. He doesn't love me in the same capacity that and I think he loved me. He loved me very much. I think he loved me as much as he was able to love me. But I'd had a boyfriend before him for a very long time, and it was a very volatile, very unhealthy relationship. But I had been in a relationship in which I had seen the way a person can look at you when they just think that you have hung the moon. And anyway, that first relationship that was very volatile, there was no way that would have ever worked out. But I had experienced that light, and I had seen that connection.
It's like you almost needed to merge those two relationships.
Totally.
You needed both sides.
And I just knew what that look was like. And this guy that I'd been with for 3 years, he never looked at me that way.
And it's a good thing, even though that relationship was terrible, it's a good thing you had it because you knew
it's
that
funny,
it existed.
I was just talking about it because that guy we are still friends. And I saw him when I was in LA, and we did not have this discussion, but I was telling a friend about this, about how like fortunate I feel to have had this awful relationship. But one, it taught me about the things that I didn't want in my future relationships, but it also showed me what that very intense love looks like.
Yeah.
And in a good way. And so this guy, he did, again, I'm babbling. As you can tell,
This is great.
Very elaborate storyteller.
You're a writer.
I'm so sorry, people who are listening.
This is amazing.
Anyway, we broke up because I realized that he was never going to look at me that way. It had been 3 years, and I was like, look, it's just going to get harder from here. You're not going to wake up tomorrow and think that I am the greatest thing that ever happened to you. So it was tough, but we broke up. But then something happened a few months later, and it wasn't because my mom thought that I was like mourning the breakup, which was not the case. And I didn't know how to explain to her that just all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I just felt incredibly depressed in a way that I had never, I had never experienced sadness like this, of this weight.
Career-wise, are you at Vogue right now?
I was at Bloomingdale's.com. And it was, and I don't know if maybe it's because there was that transition of trying to figure out, I did feel very lost, because I knew deep down that I wanted to be writing creatively. And at the time, I thought maybe I wanted to go to a magazine, I never wanted to be a journalist, but I did think that maybe I wanted to be an editor, and I thought that I wanted more freedom to be writing at a magazine, writing longer form pieces. And so I really struggled with that, and at the time I thought, well, I have this job that is comfortable, and I get to write every day, but it's not really fulfilling me, and at the time I didn't really have the vision of knowing exactly what kind of creative works I wanted to write. And so I think I was feeling a little lost. 26 is, I'm from the South, and so 26 in the South, like, you're married with a baby already, and I was single, and it sounds ridiculous to say that now, because I'm like, 26 is a baby. You should not be allowed to get married at 26 years old.
Yeah.
But, at the time I felt like, oh gosh, like, I thought I would be married by now, because I grew up in Mississippi and everybody is married by now. And so I just was dealing with some growing pains, and I just, I don't know. I fell into this deep, deep depression. Your classic symptoms of depression. You're crying for no reason. You literally bursting into tears, and it's like, what's wrong? And you ask yourself, and nothing is wrong. Nothing is wrong, and then you feel guilty, because you're like, why am I so sad?
And it's a cycle.
There's nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with my family. Everyone is healthy. Everyone is happy. Why am I so sad? And then it began sort of the panic attacks and the anxiety, like the feeling of like a brick on your chest all the time, and that you can't ever catch your breath. And then I started having these small, actually, it only happened a couple of times where I had a full-on panic attack. But it was like I was constantly fighting it, because it was, one of my triggers was large crowds of people. So commuting to work in the morning was a very, very stressful experience. And I would listen to, have you heard of the band Fortet? They're like a electronic band, and most of their work is instrumental and electronic, and they have this song called She Just Likes to Fight. And for some reason, there was something about this rhythm and this song that was very soothing to me, and it was just rhythmic in a way that was just rhythmic enough to keep my attention. And I would listen to it every morning and every afternoon when I would commute, and sometimes on repeat, because it was like the thing that kept me from having a meltdown on the train. I hate cold weather, and so this was also happening during winter, and so that was not helping. Anyway, so that, I would avoid people's calls. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to see anyone, and you don't know how to explain it to other people, because you feel like you're not justified in your sadness, and you feel, again, the guilt, and just on and on and on. And then there was a period of time then at that point my mom was very upset and wanted me to see someone, and I refused, obviously, because you're like, part of you is so in it that you don't want help. You're like, I don't want, and maybe it's partly because you're embarrassed, partly you're ashamed, partly you're just, if you've grown accustomed to the misery and you don't know what you'll do without it. And I think a lot of times that we become so familiar with these emotions, even the negative ones, that we don't know who we'll be when we don't have them to rely on. And I think that was probably a lot of it. And then I won't even get into all of it, but it was also during a period of time when I was, for the first time in my life, like sexually liberated. And so this was the first time that I really kind of discovered myself like as a sexual person. I mean, I had, had sex with my boyfriends, but it was, and I wasn't like running all over Manhattan, but I was, I was sleeping with different people, and was very detached emotionally from people, which in a way that made it very easy to sleep with people. And I don't know. So then there was a part of me that, and I think a lot of it, again, I think the sex was an escape. It was an escape from feeling the misery of the sadness. And so that became a very important part of that period of time. And so after about 8 months, my mom was really adamant that I see someone and that I get on some medication, and I did not want to do that, and I refused, and finally she just like called someone one day, and she was like, you have a prescription. Oh God, what was it for? It was a prescription for, if you said it I would know the name of it, but I can't think of it. It's one that is sort of double. It like suppresses anxiety but also helps with depression, and it's something with an L, I think. But it also, one of the side effects is that it severely tempers your sex drive. And I was like, that's all I have left. Like, I am a shell of a human. Like, if I cannot like escape from this one form, and again, it sounds terrible. It sounds like I was like, sleeping with someone like a different person every night, which I was not. But, it was, I don't know. That was a turning point though, because I guess I sort of felt like I'd been faced a little bit with an ultimatum. Like, you either need to get on medication or you're going to have to somehow find your way out of this depression. It was like people were on to me at that point. I had been avoiding their calls long enough. I had been sort of like hiding out in my East Village apartment long enough. And I don't know, after about a month, it was like things started to get easier, and then the fog gradually lifted, and then...
So you didn't take the medication?
I didn't take the medication. I just was like, really didn't want to do it. And I'm not anti-medication at all. I think that medication is great if you feel that that's what you need.
Yeah. Did you go to therapy?
I didn't.
What do you think got you out of it? You just made a choice?
I really don't know. I really don't know what happened, because, I didn't feel like I had a choice.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's the weirdest thing, and I have no idea how to explain it. Because I remember getting to a point in my depression where I thought to myself, I genuinely believed, well, this is just the way it's going to be for the rest of my life. Like, I will never know happiness. It sounds so dramatic, but I truly believed that. I truly believed that I would never feel happiness again, that I would always feel lethargic. Because the way that I like to describe it is that I felt so lethargic on the outside. I felt like as if I were sort of floating through the world, unseen, like just almost like an apparition. But on the inside, I felt like someone had trapped me in a box, and I was like banging on the box and screaming to get out. But you would have never known that by my demeanor and the way that I sort of carried myself. It was just like the strangest thing.
Yeah. So when did you meet your husband in that?
I met him not long after that, actually. And he was playing guitar with a very talented and beautiful musician named Holly Miranda. And I met them through my best friend, Julie, who lives in LA. Cool. I think the one that I mentioned earlier. Yeah. And she was managing Holly at the time. And she begged me to come. This was during CMJ, which they just had a CMJ in October. I guess they're still doing it, I assume. It's like a music festival in New York. And they were playing CMJ, and Julie begged me to come to this loft party in Bushwick. And this is 2010 Bushwick, okay? Like, there was a Roberta's, and that was it. I mean, it was like factories, Roberta's, lofts, you know, that like I don't even know what was going on. And she had been asking me for quite some time to come to Holly's shows, but because I had been depressed, I had basically been ignoring her. And I didn't want to go do anything, but she says, if you do anything for me, please come to the show tonight. I really need you there. And so I do, and I took a date because I was going out with this guy at the time, very casually. And we went, and I saw my now husband there, and I did not... I won't go into all the details because this is, again, a very long story. And
I want to hear all of it.
He hates it when I tell it because he's like, you could just make it about 20 minutes shorter. But in short,
I do the same thing.
I saw him. I did not really even... He did not register with me at all. Holly, who he was playing with, is just has the most magical voice. And she is just on stage a beautiful presence, and I was completely enamored with her. I just was like, who is this beautiful siren with this gorgeous voice? I don't even see these other people. And I ended up talking to Tim, my now husband, that night, very briefly, but again, I did not. He, to give you a little bit of a description, when we met, he was 25 years old. And I was 27, so it's not like I was like a wise old sage, but by the time that I was 27, you know, I knew pretty much exactly what I wanted. I knew what I wanted. I had been in multiple long-term relationships. You know, I just was very comfortable with who I was as a person. I knew the type of men that I thought that I liked. My husband, he was pale, and he has gorgeous crystally blue eyes, but I was not into blue eyes. I was like, always wanted to date guys with like brown eyes and brown hair, and I, you know, like my last couple of boyfriends, you know, they had like messy curly hair, and you know, this guy had a shaved head, and I was like, not into it. And so that was that. I see him again like a week later. Holly at that time was opening for My Morning Jacket at, this is when My Morning Jacket did a series of shows, and they did a whole record each night. So like it was like 5 nights, and each night was a different record. And so it was like I saw Holly play, then they play Terminal 5, and then maybe a night or two later I see him again at Bowery Electric, and Julie invites me to the show. I see him play again. He talks to me, and we did that thing where we were sort of like, oh, like, you're the guy, and he was like, oh, you're Julie's friend, and we sort of talked, but again, nothing, no sparks. Later that month, this was at the end of October in 2010, later that month, Julie said, oh, you remember Timmy? He's playing a show at Zebulon, which is a bar that is no longer in Brooklyn, RIP, but it is in LA. They've opened a branch in LA now. And Zebulon was a really amazing venue, and my husband was playing a solo show, and I went and I saw him. And I had gone out with my girls for like tons of sangria right before, so it was like a hot wire coming into this bar. And I again talked to him, and don't think much of it. He offers to drive us to the Bedford L to drop us off, because again, this was when Williamsburg was kind of a no man's land over there. And I, at the time, was dating this bartender in the East Village, and so I go to this bar in the East Village, and I see this guy that I've been, you know, seeing. Julie comes with me, and this is back when Facebook messages, I'm like so dating myself, but this is back when Facebook messages had subject lines, and he sent me a Facebook message, and the subject was you. And I remember being like, oh, very forward, because this guy, my husband, is not a particularly forward person. He's very, I don't know the right words to use without sounding like I'm trying to emasculate him, because I don't obviously want to do that. He's a very masculine man. He's just like a very polite, and I mean, he's a feminist. He is, you know, he's just not your typical guy in New York who's going to walk up and be like, hey, let me buy you a drink. Hey, so what's your name? You know, what's up? And that's how so many of the men, you know, had been in my experience. And so I was like, oh my goodness. It was something so subtle that he just said you in a subject line. And I was like, oh my. And he said, you know, great seeing you. We should hang out. Blah, blah, blah. We end up texting the next night, which is the night before Halloween. And I spend the whole night watching the birds and drinking a whole bottle of red wine and eating a whole pizza. And he stayed at home watching Rear Window. And It's rumored, isn't it? Yeah. And he ends up sort of conning me into going on a date a few days later, and I meet him in Williamsburg, and we go to Fettisau on our first date, which is a terrible idea to go for barbecue. But I didn't know that it was a date. He had sort of been like, oh, you're from the South, do you like barbecue? And I'm like, of course, I love barbecue. And so we went and we had barbecue. Again, no sparks. I was actually angry that we were on a date because I was very aggressive at that point in my life, and I was very much like, this is what I want, and this is what I need, and, you know, whatever. I probably terrified him. And in short, we started hanging out, but I was very upfront. I was like, I'm seeing someone else right now, and I will probably continue to do that. I think that you're wonderful. If you would like to hang around, that would be great. I would love your company, but, you know, do not expect anything from me. You know, I don't want to call you when I land in a new city on a flight. I don't want to text you before I go to bed. Like, do not expect me to give you anything, basically. I mean, I wasn't a bitch about it, but I just wanted to be honest. I wanted to be upfront. Yeah. I was not ready to be in a relationship. And to be fair, I recognize that my husband is a very special human and a very wonderful person, and I knew that I would totally mess it up if I were to be his girlfriend at that point, and he definitely did not deserve that. Anyway, we hung out for a while. I came to my senses. I realized that this guy that I was dating, who was a bartender in the East Village, could not have cared less about me. I could have been hit by a bus, and he probably wouldn't have even known. And then I was like, what am I doing? Here's this guy over here who's this wonderful, amazing human. He just wants to love me. I don't know why I am resisting his love. And we sort of grew together. I don't know, it just wasn't your typical, like, we met, we fell in love. Like, yeah. He really grew on me. Even though
your next Modern Love column.
I know, right? Well, and it's funny because that night of our first date, I remember looking at him and thinking, because I did not have an immediate, like, romantic attraction to him, but I remember looking at him and thinking, I need this person in my life, and I put this in my vows. And I remember thinking that I didn't know in what capacity, but I knew that he was going to make me a better person. Like, I knew that he was going to be a really solid, and that's such a selfish way to think of it now, but at the time I just remember thinking, like, I don't know who this person is going to be in my life. Maybe a professional partner of some sorts, like, creatively. Maybe he'll be just a good friend. Who knows? I did not think that he would be my husband at that moment. But I remember thinking that I needed him in my life. And I was still just this selfish tornado at the time. And thankfully, he was very patient. And he just waited around for me. And I would not let him call me his girlfriend. I wouldn't let him leave a toothbrush in my apartment. I was like, if you come here, you take all your things and you leave. Like, you did not exist here. Like... And wow. He tolerated all of that because he is a saint. And then one day in March, I guess we've been seeing each other for like 6 months or something. One day we went to a party and he just started introducing me as his girlfriend, and I never corrected him. Aww. And that was basically how we got together. And then we were married 4 years later.
How did you know that he was the one that you wanted to marry?
You know, I don't know, it wasn't like a moment. It was just that over time, as we sort of grew together as a couple, I just knew that he checked all the major boxes. Yeah. He was loyal, and he is kind. He's a kind human, and he's funny, and he's sweet, and he's creative, and I knew that he would always work more to keep us afloat, to keep our life afloat. I don't know, he's just a stand-up guy, you know, and that was so important to me. And I also knew that he would really commit to me. I had been in relationships where I had been cheated on before, and that's such a common thing, you know, people cheat all the time. But I guess I just knew what I wanted my marriage to look like, and I saw that he could provide that for me. Yeah. And also I loved being with him, you know?
Yeah.
It wasn't all about, oh my God, I love this person so much. There was that. I mean, it got to a point where I knew I wanted to be with him forever because I realized that my life was just better when he was in it. And maybe that's such a selfish way. Like, why do we get married? Like, is it solely a selfish reason? I don't know. But I remember thinking that he just made everything better. He made me calmer. He made me feel happy. He talked me off ledges, you know? He was my sounding board.
It sounds like he balances your energy really well.
Absolutely.
I just had a conversation on that couch with my boyfriend about the same thing of like, I feel things way up here and then way down here, and I'm in a million directions and I have a million ideas, and he's really even.
Yeah.
And I think if I was with someone who had my same temperament, it wouldn't work. And he told me the other day that he was with someone who had a similar temperament as him, because he got really frustrated with me last weekend because I was walking around the city being like, I'm feeling so many feelings and blah blah blah, and like and I just kept saying to him, I don't know exactly how I said it, but I was just like, you should be with someone else. It would be easier. They might live in the same city as you. Like, there's so many other people that would probably be better for you because you're really great. Like, what are you doing? Like, that's what I kept saying. And he got like legitimately mad at me, and he was just like, can you please stop doing that? Like, that is really annoying and I don't like it at all and it makes me upset. Please stop. And we had this conversation where he was just like, I like this actually. Like, I know it feels a lot for you and I know you don't even like feeling it. Yeah. But I actually like being around it. Yeah. Because I've like been with the alternative and it doesn't work for me. And I was like, oh, wow, that was such an aha moment. It was like a breath of fresh air of like, oh, I can stop. Like, he's into this. Yeah. You know?
And for me, long-term partnership was all about that balance. I mean, I am very good at thinking very long-term. I mean, I'm not too long-term, but I'm very good about seeing the big picture of things. Like, I can sort of, I'm very calm in a chaotic situation. Like, if somebody, like, you know, I don't know. I can't even think of a great example, but if someone is injured or there's like a minor emergency or something, like, I'm very collected in sort of getting things done and knowing what to do. And he gets very flustered in these moments. In moments that go from 0 to 60, he immediately like loses all composure and he's very flustered and very sort of sharp. And so we complement each other that way, but like when I have these moments of straight up panic about...
It's like over the little things.
Yeah, when I'm having a moment of panic of being like, what about this and what about that? And what are we going to do about that? He's like, it's fine. We'll change our minds. Yeah. I'm like, what are we going to do if we move to this place and we buy a house and we don't like it? He's like, then we'll move.
Yeah. I'm the same way. It's like the little things that totally take me out, but the big things I can be like, chill with and fine.
Absolutely. So we balance each other well, and I don't know, like I said, I just knew that life was going to be more awesome if he was there. And we're both very independent people, and I do feel like we really grew together as people, because, you know, he was still pretty young, you know, when we met, and we went through a lot of, and I feel like he really only came into his own a few years ago as a person. I feel like he was very much evolving and figuring out the type of person he wanted to be, and I think he's achieved that. I mean, we're always evolving, right? Yeah. We're always becoming new versions of ourselves, and I think that's another thing. I think I've always I respect him. I respect him so much, and I think he respects me, and you know, we have a very equal relationship, and you know, I don't know, it's easy. I guess that's the other way I knew. It was so easy to be with him. It was so easy. I never get sick of being with him, and I was like, yeah, I think this is going to work pretty well.
We'll stay in this topic. I usually ask this with the quickfire ones, but what is your greatest lesson on relationships? If you had to sum it up. It's hard to be put on the spot.
I know. I want to say, trust your partner. have an immense amount of trust in my husband as a partner, as a man, as a citizen of the world. But that said, I am able to trust him because he has proven to me multiple times that he is a trustworthy person. So that one is tricky because sometimes you end up with a partner that you maybe don't trust, I think.
So the cliff note on that, or the like asterisk on that would be, once you find someone that you know you trust and you know it's right, then
just trust them. Like, trust them. Like, if they say, I love you, don't doubt them. If they say...
I could have used that last weekend.
Yeah, if they say everything is fine, like, believe them. When they go on tour, believe that they're not, like, sleeping with other people. Like, just give them the benefit of the doubt. Give them... so that, for me, has been a major, major thing. Like, I trust my husband. And I also, you know, if my husband decides that he's going to cheat on me, or if he decides he wants to be with someone else, he's a grown man. You know, he can make those decisions. And I guess I don't live in fear that will happen. I hope it doesn't happen. I don't ever want that to happen. But I also don't think that we can control other people. And I think trying to is exhausting and a waste of our energies. And, you know, my husband knows that I trust him with this. And I hope that he respects me enough to not let whatever, because we're humans, right? Like, we are all so incredibly imperfect, and I hope that he knows that I have put this much trust in him, that when he goes, you know, I'm not like, where were you tonight, what were you doing? I'm just kind of like, I hope you had fun, and great, I believe you when you tell me that this is what you did and that you came home and you went to bed. I believe that there was not another person there with you, you know. And I don't know, so I guess trust has been a major, and that's also, we spend a lot of time apart, and so I think that in my situation, it is crucial to believe your partner. Because it is exhausting when you are constantly doubting them, and it's exhausting for both parties, you know, to constantly feel like, why don't you believe me, or and that sometimes I feel like maybe is like a self-fulfilling prophecy, you know. But what was the other one going to be? I think I was going to say the other lesson I have learned about relationships is to give your partner space, like, allow them. And again, this also depends on the person and the relationship, but one of the readings that we had read at our wedding was a Rilke quote, and I can't quote it at this moment, but it was basically about the moment that you understand that, you know, basically a canyon of space exists between you and another person, then you can be happy. Because I don't know, I think we have this idea about partnership that we should know everything our partner is thinking and feeling, and that we should, you know, that they can't do anything without us, that we need to be let in on all of their thoughts and feelings. And I guess that's a nice idea. I would love to, I love that idea of intimacy. I also think that my husband should be allowed to explore his thoughts without me trying to jump in the front seat. And, you know, there's, you know, when he makes music with other people, it's such a beautiful experience, and like his chemistry. I mean, I can see his chemistry with other people, and sometimes they're women. Holly, for example, their chemistry when they play music together is electric, and it's so beautiful to me. And that's something that I will never have with him. I don't play an instrument. You know, I'm not ever trying to be in a band. I will never know what that feels like to experience that with him, and that's okay. You know, if he were to come to me and say, like, I don't know, I feel really passionate about exploring, you know, writing a record about my exes or something, I would be like, okay, do it. Like, you know, feed your art, live your life, you know, like, again, of course there's parameters of the things that you want to allow your partner to do, but like, I hate to use that word allow. Like, he is his own person. He's his own human. And I think accepting the fact that there will always be space that I don't get to fill is crucial because it allows him to flourish as a human. And I like to think that the more he is able to flourish independently, that he will be able to come back and love me even more. Kind of that idea of like, the more love I give me, then I get to go out and give it to other people because I'm so full of love for myself and for my work and for my life that then I actually have this overflow that I get to go out and be like so kind to strangers on the street, like open doors for people and like, you know, not get mad when somebody cuts me off in traffic and just like wave. And anyway, I think it's that similar idea is like just giving them, allowing them the space to explore their own, I don't want to say journey, but explore their own path.
Path. That's a synonym. We can do better, but we're getting, that's a step up. Okay, so something else we talk about on this podcast every episode is body image, and we haven't really gotten into that at all. But I want to.
No, do you have another year?
I know. Well, we have to a little bit. We're gonna dock this boat, but we gotta keep going a little bit. I'm gonna get you out of here. You're probably like, oh my god, you're gonna get to drinks with your friends and be like, I got trapped. Okay, so you wrote something in a recent essay about body image, and I wrote down my favorite part. You said, on bad days, I fall prey to the false idea that there's only one way to love my figure, which is to inhabit a body that's not mine. I'm so grateful for my body, no matter what it looks like in the different stages of my life. That's the attitude I choose to feed. So I love how you say that you want to feed that attitude. So I want to ask you, how do you do that in such a pervasive diet culture that we live in? So I usually frame this question of, you know, when you're having what I call a bad body image moment, how do you not let that turn into a bad body image day or week or month? So you say in this that you try to feed that. So how do you do that and not let it spiral?
I think I just try to get immediate perspective. You know, I think about how much time I personally, and I know so many people and women especially, but, you know, men can feel this too. Think about how much time we spend worrying about our bodies and about what it looks like and what other people think about our bodies. And then I guess I just try to pull back immediately and be like, who the fuck cares? You know? It doesn't matter. I am like, why? And the second that I ask myself that, like, why are you so, like, are you happy? Yes. Okay. Then what are you so worried about? You know, and I do this all the time. And it's definitely a thing that I struggle with. Now I'm, you know, I'm in my, almost at my mid-30s. My metabolism has slowed, and that is a thing that I am also learning to deal with. I used to have the craziest metabolism. I could just eat like 100 cheeseburgers and then go for like one run, like one long run, and then I would be sort of like back to feeling great. I guess I recognize that this disease is a social and cultural disease, and I am the only person that chooses to accept it. Like, I'm the only person that chooses to look at the world and be like, you guys are right. Supermodels are the only people who are beautiful. Yeah. And, like, I am the only person that has the attitude to change that conversation. And so in those moments when I am feeling down, or, oh God, you know, when sometimes you go into like a dressing room and the lighting is really bad
I don't
and
have
you
the
look at your
rooms.
butt and you're just like, what is happening?
Pro tip, take the clothes home, try them on in your own space, take them back. It might take you longer, but
it's all about perception, and I just try to pull back and be like, you are a healthy person, you're happy, you like your life, you love to eat pizza. Why would you ever deprive yourself of this joy?
We have so few sensory pleasures in life.
Absolutely.
To deny it is crazy.
And like, I'm not worried about my heart. I'm not worried about my bones or my joints. Like, I work out like 5 times a week. And, you know, and I still am going like, oh, I'm so sad that I can't wear this dress. Well, like, just get another dress. Like, there are a billion things you can wear that are going to look amazing. I choose to be upset about not being able to wear the dress or whatever it is. And I don't know, I think it's just like immediately shifting the conversation and being like, what are you talking about? Like, everything is great.
Okay, and another essay you wrote about body image and your story, which I really loved, and everyone should fully read, and I'll link to it. But this part in particular really resonated with me about not knowing how you should feel about your body and the ideal for it. And this is what I wrote down. You wrote, while there are loads of body positive women out there, I just don't happen to know many women personally who are wholly content with the size of their figure, be it curvy or petite, big-chested, flat-chested, and it bothers me. The former dancer who is all too familiar with self-imposed torment, it upsets me that I, as well as America, am so consumed with the size and shape of the female figure. And you just touched on that a bit, but I want to talk about, you know, with this body positive movement and fat acceptance movement and all of, you know, what we talked about. I think we summed it up really beautifully, but how do you balance, you know, self-care and wanting to look a certain way aesthetically with getting angry about this as a feminist issue and a political issue? It's something I like to think about a lot, and I think you addressed it so great and how you navigate that in that essay.
Yeah, thank you. I think it is being open to understanding all points of view. Like, I am very interested in how, you know, because some women are like, just call me fat, that's what I want to be called. And other women are like, I would prefer, you know, full figured or whatever. And I guess I'm really interested in listening to that conversation. So as far as like on that end, I guess I think I want to be a student in this movement as much as anything. Like, you tell me, like, what do you want to be called, or how do you feel comfortable? And I don't know, and I guess as far as like personally, I base it off the way that I feel, which is a lot of times why I work out the way that I do. You know, and I still to this day, I mean, like I said, when I come to New York, I might as well just like buy a case of wine and carry it in my purse, because I drink so much wine. I'm like out with my friends all the time. And I end up eating so much food, like to the point that I don't feel good, you know, I don't, but it's just like I get so carried away, and I love celebrations, and that, you know, I still always have those moments where I go, oh, I just don't feel good. I feel bad, because in my regular life, I eat pretty well, and I do not drink like a fish on a regular basis, especially since my husband and I have gone on tour. Like, sometimes I won't drink for weeks. And I think being more in tune with the way that my body feels. And I still have moments where I will put on something and I'll be like, I feel good. Like, this feels good on my body. I love the way these jeans feel. Like, I feel like I'm looking so fine. And I love that. And I feel strong. You know, I feel good in my body. And then I'll like catch a glimpse in the mirror, and I'll be like, "Oh my God, why is my ass so big?"
Or you see a photo, or like a window.
Absolutely. And so I just try to remind myself that gut reaction is just a product of years and years and years of messaging and of negative programming and negative attention. Like, the only reason I think that is because my whole life I've been subliminally and blatantly told that was not good. Yeah. And so I even sometimes will do these little exercises with myself where I'll wear something that I know maybe isn't very flattering on my figure, but I'll do it anyway, because I'm like, again, who cares? I don't hate my body. And I find myself falling into that trap occasionally, where, again, you know, you look in the mirror, you go like, oh my God, why are my thighs so much bigger than I thought they were? Because I had never identified as like a thick or a curvy girl. And I don't think a lot of people would even now, as at a size 8, look at me, you know, and say she's like real curvy. But, you know, maybe some people would, you know.
First of all, you're beautiful. This is an audio presentation, and you're not fishing for that. But I just want to tell the listeners.
Thank you very much. But, like, I have this is a perfect example. I have a pair of overalls that I bought at Madewell about a year ago, and I love them. They're very soft denim, and they have, like, a high-waisted thing, little seam here, and they're just comfortable. And they're overalls. Like, overalls are the best. But they accentuate my midsection as though it were a small inflatable donut. Like, it just like hugs my belly and my hips in a way that genuinely is not flattering. But I realized I started doing this a while back because I put them on. And I had an idea in my head of what they would look like, and then I looked in the mirror, and I was like, oh my god, why does it look like you have a giant inflatable donut around your waist? And I was very upset about it. Like, it looked very soft and, like, doughy in them, and I was just, like, very upset about it. And then I just stopped myself, and I was like, why do you feel that way? The reason that you think that looks ugly is because you have been programmed to believe
and in other cultures, that would be beautiful and wanted and desired, and it's desired now.
The conversation should be changing to, like, I don't want to look this way or that way. Like, who cares? You look great. You look great the way you are. And so I wear them. I just wear the freaking overalls because I like them. And I'm like, yes, I know that my ass looks a little pillowy in them, and I realize that my hips are on full display and they're a little squishy. No, it doesn't look like the girl in the catalog, but, like, last time I checked, nobody paid me to be a model. So I'm just going to keep wearing these jeans that I love. You know, and I'm like, models look like that because, one, genetically, they also work their asses off to look that way. And most of them, maybe not all of them. For a fact, not all of them do. Some of them just have great metabolism and genetics. But a lot of them work very hard because it is their job. I work very hard as a writer. They work very hard as a model to keep up that appearance. Yeah. Same. So anyway, I guess just continuing to challenge myself. Because if I can't accept this conversation, like how... basically, it starts with us individually. It starts with every person challenging their self. Because the only reason we have these thoughts is because, you know... a billion years ago, somebody was like, this is the only way to be beautiful.
Yeah, this is the standard of beauty that exists now.
Yeah.
In 100 years, more than that, a different standard of beauty. It's whatever is most difficult to attain and costs the most money to attain is what we perceive as beautiful.
Right.
And I wrote this down too, which again is probably a whole nother podcast, and you'll just have to come back and hopefully we'll be friends and this will happen again.
Sounds good.
But I know we both went through, I call it my... lollipop phase of head being bigger than body.
Oh yeah.
And that whole thing.
That
and
ball.
I think it's like I'm fine that standards of beauty exist, and I'm going to choose to participate in some of them. Like I dye my hair, and that's fine, and that is a standard of beauty. It's not great for my hair, and I get it. But I'm not going to participate in the standard of beauty that includes thinness because that's not good for my sanity and my health. You know? And so I think as dieting. And so I just think, I don't know, getting angry about this and looking at this from a feminist perspective, from a sociological perspective, has been so beneficial to me, and I think you articulated that so well.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, what is it he talks about in The Power of Now, about, I mean, this is, in his case, he's talking about the emotions that we feel that sort of consume us. And I think I agree. Like, I also obviously prescribe to, like, standards of beauty that might be outdated, but I do it because it makes me feel good, or, you know, whatever. And I completely support that. Which is okay, Exactly. I mean, like, my girlfriend Jessica sent me an article a while back that I thought I continue to think about. And I am terrible at remembering the author and, like, where the piece was published. But it was about shaving. And it was like, shaving is basically saying you're not okay the way you are naturally. It's like women sort of, and we associate shaving with being beautiful and feeling beautiful. And this whole article is like, actually, it's just like women continuing to change their appearance because they think that the way they are is not good enough. Mm-hmm. And it just was a really interesting article, and I think about that a lot, and I remember that a lot when I think about these standards of beauty and sort of how we choose which ones we want to prescribe to. And did I use that word? I always use that word wrong.
Subscribe to, prescribe to, whatever.
Yeah.
We get it.
You get it. And subscribe, that's what it is. I always use, and I did that in a piece once, and I was like, oh crap. Anyway, I think that the important thing is that you don't become so consumed with a standard of beauty that it sort of takes over you. The minute it becomes a mild obsession, and I also am just a firm believer of having like, not never having, but of trying to live a life that is as addiction free as possible. Yeah. Like the moment you become codependent on something, then that is the moment that we should try something different, or try to wean ourselves off of that thing. And that's just a weird hang up that I have. But the moment that a standard of beauty becomes such an obsession for you, in that you don't feel okay without it, then it is an addiction.
Or it like hinders your life, like particularly with shaving.
Mm-hmm.
I think compared to manipulating your size and shape on the basis of dieting or doing negative things to ourselves, I think that is a different thing than shaving and being like, oh, this thing is like mildly annoying in my life,
right? But
it's not holding me back. But I've also had moments where this is like long story, vulnerable, I guess, but like I not vulnerable, like more in a silly way, but I remember like having like a weird ingrown hair on my bikini line and being like, I can't hang out with you today because I was like, this is gonna be like a whole thing, like, and like nobody cares, nobody noticed, it was fine, but I was so in my head about like my bikini line,
well, and then there is this thin line of like how much space do we give ourselves to accept the things that make us feel a certain way, and then when do we push back? I don't know that there's like a proper, because it's different for everyone. Some people are like, I am so physically uncomfortable with this, ingrown hair that I cannot function. So, and in a way, you have to be like, well, I mean, I have to respect like that. This is a thing. I don't know.
And then at a certain point too, I'm really toying with the ideas that like standards of beauty do exist, and this is the world we live in. And right now, even the standard of beauty does include thinness right now. And I don't want to participate that and perpetuate that, but I think acknowledging that is okay, and it's bad.
Absolutely,
like, society's terrible to fat people, and that's like a big issue. But it's just interesting to talk about these things.
Well, and I do think that all you can do is acknowledge it, recognize it, and ask yourself, how can I be more informed? How can I be more active? How can I challenge myself to, participate, even if it's on a personal level? Because the only way that we're ever going to create any change is to acknowledge it, to acknowledge our faults, and to acknowledge and just to start it on a personal level,
Yes, 1000%. Okay. There are 1 million things that I want to ask you, but we'll do these all quick fire. Okay. So just say the first thing that comes to your mind. I'll warn you that they start out easier and they get more challenging.
Okay.
So just prepare yourself.
Can't wait.
Okay, I warm you up. Favorite color?
Red.
Favorite day of the week?
Ooh. Even though I'm a freelancer, I think I might have to say it's still Friday.
Favorite hour of the day?
Whatever the hour is that I stop working and start cooking.
This is a good transition question. Best thing you've eaten in the last week?
Oh, God. Oh, it's impossible. Cause
First thing that comes to mind.
First thing that came to mind was one of my all-time favorite restaurants is this place called El Almacen, and it is in Williamsburg, and it has actually started to change a little bit. It's been there forever, but one of the things I loved about it was that it maintained its integrity even as Williamsburg has changed drastically over the last decade. And I don't know, I loved it. I loved the wine, I loved the food, I loved the ambiance of the place. But they have two things that I cannot get enough of. One of them is an empanada with spinach, cheese, and corn, and it is one of my favorite things in the world. And then they have a truffle ceviche with red onion and chives, and it just lights me up inside. So that's probably, I had that like 2 nights ago. So
that's amazing. Okay. What is something that you want to be doing less of in your life?
Repacking my suitcase.
Something that you want to be doing more of in your life?
Writing this collection of essays that I'm working on.
What's one thing that you wish more people knew about you?
That contrary to popular belief that I actually do like to be alone?
That's a good one. Okay, how do you handle your relationship with social media, technology, all of that? I think it's an interesting topic.
I try to be an active participant. So if I am looking at something on my phone, I try to be very intentional about what I was looking at and looking for, and not just going and grabbing my phone and opening an app and scrolling through something.
Yeah.
That if I'm checking an email, I'm checking an email and then I'm putting my phone away.
That's so good.
You know, that I'm not just constantly, I just hate it. I hate the mindless, and sometimes you need mindlessness, right? It's the same reason that people turn on a television and stare at the wall or whatever.
It's a coping mechanism.
Yeah, you know, and occasionally I do allow myself a moment to be just mindless as hell. But on a day-to-day basis, I try to, also because as a freelancer, I'm constantly connected to my email, and I even often ask my clients, because I've had clients before like text, and I have asked them politely to please email me, that I cannot be having my corporate work life coming through my text message. I mean, I always tell them, call if you need me, call if you need to discuss something.
If it's urgent. It just is more easy to get lost when it's not in the actual inbox.
Exactly, and I have like a system. So yeah, I try, and I fail all the time at it, but my goal is to be an active, intentional participant and not just constantly like frying my brain on what to look at next.
How do you handle comparison? That's something I struggle with a lot.
I think it's just a constant struggle for everybody. And I guess I have accepted that I will always have moments in which I feel lesser. But I have done a lot of reading about people's journeys. Like, I'm also very interested in how people ended up. I'm very interested in people's origin stories and how they got to where they are. And a book that was really, really helpful for me was a book called, it's called Getting There, a book of mentors. And it's basically all these really famous, successful people telling their stories about how they got where they are. I mean, it's everyone from the girl that invented Spanx to John Paul DeJorio of John Paul Mitchell Systems to Anderson Cooper to Warren Buffett.
Cool.
And these people talk about their journey. I don't know. I think that it's just also, I love Elizabeth Gilbert because I love hearing her talk about how hard writing is. And
makes you feel less alone.
Yeah, I think I just try to remember, I try to stock up on other people's stories so that when I have that moment of comparison and I feel like I'm like the crappiest writer in the world, or like I'm not pretty like I used to be or something like that, I just try to remember that individualism is important for one, and also that we all are doing our own thing, and the only, like, the quickest way for me to fall behind in this path is for me to keep comparing myself.
Yeah.
Like, if I want to sabotage my happiness and my goals, then keep at it. Keep looking at other people and thinking that they're doing something better than you. But the only way I'm going to actually achieve the things that I am so passionate about achieving is if I just immediately shut down those feelings of insecurity and keep moving. You know?
So well said.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh, that was so good. Okay, what are the first 3 things you do when you wake up in the morning?
Like, after I open my eyes?
Yeah, just any morning routines you have that...
Oh, okay.
when
I
you're
was like, because
traveling.
usually I turn off my sound machine, or my husband turns off his sound machine, depending on if I'm with him or not. And I, unfortunately, usually look at my email first thing. Because especially when I was in LA, I was 3 hours behind the majority of my clients in New York, and so I immediately check my email.
No emergencies.
Yeah, just to make sure that no one is like having a panic attack and asking me to do something immediately.
For peace of mind.
And that's also something I should probably be better about, is not being so available. But I like to be available for my clients, and so. But then I put it away. Like, I might like look at my Instagram and then close it, and then I put my phone away. And when my husband and I are together, he always almost always gets up first, and he makes coffee for both of us. And he knows that I hate waking up to artificial light, and so he will open the drapes like very delicately and sort of let the natural light come in.
Oh, that's amazing.
And so I usually have a cup of coffee, and then I probably will go to my laptop. So terrible. Sometimes I'm at my laptop at like 7:45 in the morning. I'm not actually working, but I might just be sort of getting organized for the day, because every day is different for me, and I like to have an idea of how much time I have to write creatively and how much, work and how many deadlines I have in a day. So that's lately been it. It is like coffee first, sort of get prepared for the day. I might do a little bit of work, and then I usually go work out, and then I come back to work.
I was just going to ask when you do your workouts, because I find I really love going to an early morning workout class or getting that done in the morning, but I'm also freshest in the morning and most creative in the morning and have the most willpower and discipline in the morning, and that starts to deplete. So it's
Absolutely.
like I want to use that time for work,
Yeah.
but also it's almost my day is thrown off if I do it in the morning.
Absolutely.
It's thrown off for work, and if I work in the morning, it's thrown off because I wish I would have gotten the workout in the morning. So it's like,
usually, and I do have the good fortune of being able to work from anywhere. If I want to work from home, I can. If I want to go to a coffee shop, I prefer to work in a place where there's lots of other people.
Me too.
My brother is a law professor now at Northeastern in Boston, and so I just like went to one of the buildings with him where all the students are like doing their thing, and I just wanted to be around them, and while they were all doing something, it really helped me focus. But yeah, I will when I worked at Vogue, I would get up at 6 a.m. and I would go to the gym, which is not something that is easy for me or comes naturally, but it was the only time that I was going to get a workout in. So I would do that, but now I try to get a little bit of work done. Sometimes I'll get up, I'll have my coffee and do one of those writing exercises, just sort of flush out whatever dumb shit I would probably say otherwise. Mm-hmm. And then I try to work out somewhere between like 10 and 11. Then I like shower, and then I take the rest of the afternoon to do, either copywriting work or creative work.
Yeah, cool. So I wrote this book, as you know, about journaling. What is your relationship with journaling? Have you ever processed through writing, or as a full-time writer now?
I have tried, and I would like to have a better system. For a while, I was looking for online apps. Or online
prompts.
Yeah, there was. What is it? It's not. Is it called 750 words? There's one where you.
Yeah.
You just go and you just
yeah.
have a blank sheet.
Mm-hmm.
I did that for a while. I do like the idea of just stream of consciousness writing and just getting it, because I do think a lot of times that clears the space for saying what you really want to say.
Yeah,
I'm
it
just
just
not,
skims the pond.
yeah, it
That's what
does,
I
but
say in the
I'm
book.
not as consistent. So I will be curious to read the book.
Well, I say in the book that there's two kinds of journalers, and not one is better than the other. There's the SOS journaler that journals when they like feel pregnant with something they need to process, and they're just like, I just need to like work this out for myself. They almost have to. And then there's maintenance journalers, who are people who kind of write about what happens every day and just do it because it feels good. And I'm not that way.
See, I wish I was that way. I also am not that
Yeah.
way. I take a lot of notes. I have a billion Word documents that are just littered with all kinds of nonsense, and I keep a lot of notes on my phone.
Me too. So you're almost like marking for yourself.
Yes.
It's like I do the same thing.
Sometimes I have a moment, like a thought of, sort of inspiration, and I think I'm like, I have to work this into because I currently at this moment, I should not be working on 2 different creative projects, because that's what maniacs do. I'm never going to finish either of them, but I will. But I'm certain it will take me much longer to finish each of these projects, because I'm simultaneously writing them. But I have this one collection of essays that I finally begun to write, something that I wanted to write for a very long time. And then I have begun working on a novel.
Cool.
I am also not a fiction writer. As you know, like, I pretty much strictly write essays, but I love the flexibility and freedom that you have with fiction. And so I've begun collecting dialogue and sort of scenes. So I write scenes and I write dialogue, and that's really it. I'm just like, these are the things I know need to make it in the novel, and then of course the essays are something completely different.
Cool.
But
I'm so excited for both.
Oh, thank you. I hope I don't die before I publish them. I hope that someone will eventually want to publish them. I wasn't writing these things for the longest time, because again, as we do, we're looking for ways to avoid getting the work done, and I'm thinking, this is stupid, this is a dumb concept, no one's going to want to read this is a terrible idea, and I just wasn't doing it. And again, I finally just got fed up, and I was like, well, you're never going to find out how good or bad it can be because you haven't written it yet.
Yeah.
So I finally just sat down, and a lot of it has to do with whatever city I'm in. Like when I was in Mississippi with my mom and my dad, I just had this onslaught of inspiration and ideas and things I wanted to write about, and that kind of got me started. And so since then, I've begun to sort of, but yeah, so I guess I wouldn't call that journaling, but I make a lot of notes.
Yeah. What advice do you have for people who want to be freelancers or writers? I think hearing your story is so helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, I think my advice is just, it's there's so much and so little at the same time. Just keep doing it. I think the thing that I try to remind myself is that I think being I don't know if I should even say successful, but like being a writer, as in like actually getting the work done, I think involves learning how to be really uncomfortable with yourself. I think it involves learning how to be okay with hating yourself sometimes, because I just think that's part of the process. Like I think, no, I don't know. I have yet to meet a writer who does not have extreme self-deprecation when it comes to their work. Because how could you not? It's like you're gutting yourself open and being like, I hope you guys like it. Yeah. And so I guess my advice would just be learn how to sit in your own shit. I'm sorry, that is a disgusting phrase, but learn how to be really uncomfortable, and that if you truly believe that this is the thing that you are meant to do or that you want to do, then just don't stop. Yeah. Just keep moving. You can only, as long as you don't stop, you'll at least do something. And maybe it won't look like what you thought it would look like. It might be something totally different, but as long as you stay in motion, moving forward and constantly squashing your doubt, you'll be okay. You'll land somewhere. Amazing. And I guess as far as being a freelancer, yeah, you gotta have very little shame. I mean, you really have to be, you have to hustle, and you have to be on top of of your work to keep getting more. And I guess ultimately just be kind and humble and just keep working really hard all the time.
That's all really good. Okay, we're going to land this plane. I'm going to ask you the final question, but one more thing. Where are you right now with spirituality, God, what happens when we die?
Okay, I'll try to make it quick. That it's interesting because that has sort of evolved a little bit in the last year, and it was interesting because in my soul tattoo, Ashley, one of my cards that Ashley told me about was that I would experience like sort of a spiritual awakening this year, and I was like, that's interesting. I grew up very religious. My mom is a pretty devout Episcopalian. My dad is just my dad. And but I grew up going to a Baptist church because that's where all my friends went, and that was very, like hellfire and brimstone and sort of like put the fear in God in me. And I think ultimately did definitely turn me away. And when I got to New York, and as I started meeting lots of other people and meeting lots of people of other religions and denominations, and I realized that maybe this is why I love You Made It Weird so much, because I just love hearing these conversations about spirituality and the evolution of spirituality. And so
I wish I would have asked this question earlier.
No, but it's okay. Well, I'll make it quick. Basically, I sort of evolved out of Christianity because all the things that I had previously been taught just didn't make any sense to me anymore. And I, especially Baptist, and my husband and I are very similar in this. He grew up Catholic, and that definitely turned him away.
Yeah. Me too. There's this saying that's like, there's no better way to become an atheist than to go to Catholic school.
That's amazing. Yeah. So that said, it's been several years now that I have not identified as a Christian, but I also would not identify as an atheist. I am a very spiritual person, but I do not feel religious.
Yeah.
And I do very much believe that there is a greater power, and I don't use the word pray often because in my experience I associate that with Christianity, but I do believe that you can pray and not be a Christian. I believe you can, pray. And so I technically, yes, I do pray. I do believe in a higher power. I'm kind of verdict still out for me on afterlife. I truly believe, and this is like literally another podcast, but I very much believe in a collective consciousness, and I do believe in reincarnation, and I believe that we evolve as spirits into different forms, and
can we just talk more?
I know. So yeah, that's where I am right now. I very much believe in basic principles of so many of the basic principles of Christianity, but I also very much disagree with a lot of them, and so therefore do not assign myself to a particular religion at this point. But and then at the end of the day, I'm like, just be a good person, just be nice, just help people. Just don't be toxic.
I think the best thing about religion, the whole reason why I think religion exists is for us to all be okay with the fact that we can't control anything, and everything to tie this whole thing and dock this boat and get you out of here. It's, the control that we turn to tap out of life in New York City of being flustered, the control that we turn to from an eating disorder, the control that we turn to with work or with relationships, trying to control and tap out of presence, right? I think religion exists to make us okay with the fact that nothing is in our control, and we have to be okay with that. But I think the best thing you said in all of this was what you said in your essay about if you apply that kindness to yourself, you'll have an abundance that you can give to the world, and it comes back to you.
Yeah. I like to think that that's the way the world works. I mean, it's not the way people work necessarily, but I like to believe that.
Me too.
That it's recycling.
Yes, me too. Okay, so the name of this podcast is Let It Out. And first, I just want to say thank you so much for doing this and coming over and spending so much time. I can't even like conceptualize how much time we've been spending here, but this is amazing.
I apologize.
No, you were amazing.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure that I wrung you dry for all of your wisdom. Is there anything else that you want to share, recommend, or plug or promote? I'll link to everything.
You're so sweet. Thank you. No, I don't think so. I am excited. Well, by the time this comes out, it probably will have aired. But my Modern Love podcast.
Oh, good. I was just going to ask you if you're going to be on it because I love that podcast.
I already recorded my postscript, and it's going to air December the 6th. This will come after that.
But we'll link to it here.
So yeah, that's going to come out. I'm super excited about
exciting.
That.
I can't wait.
The girl that's reading it is some girl from Outlander. I
haven't seen that show, but
I
I hear it's really good.
And I felt terrible. I need to watch it.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, so that's it. And just, thank you for reading. It means the world to me.
Thank you so much for doing the podcast and being here, and I hope that we get to talk more.
Okay, that was the season finale of Let It Out with Dini. Well, with me, but today's guest was Dini, and gosh, I just love her. I hope she comes back on the podcast. Read all of her essays, get obsessed with her, follow her on Instagram. All of the links to her and everything we shared and talked about in this podcast are in the show notes. Please come to my website and check those out. Support the Patreon page, support the sponsors. You're going to hear about them right now. Today's episode of Let It Out is brought to you in part by FreshBooks. FreshBooks is the easy-to-use online cloud accounting software that I use and I love. It makes staying on track of your finances simple and easy, and you can even customize it with your logo and your colors. It makes being more productive, organized, and most importantly, getting paid quickly in your business simple. Getting started with FreshBooks is extremely easy, even if you're not a numbers person, actually especially if you're not a numbers person. It makes payments simple and easy for everyone. It outsources the stuff that you're maybe not as good at, and it becomes your financial assistant for your life. There are new features that include an outline of a project and the scope of work and a timeline, no switching software or fussing over style and formatting, and most importantly, not wasting your valuable time. I love FreshBooks so much, and you probably will too. So go ahead and get your free 30-day unrestricted trial by going to freshbooks.com/letitout and entering Let It Out in the How Did You Hear About Us section. That's freshbooks.com/letitout and enter Let It Out in the How Did You Hear About Us section for a 30-day unrestricted free trial. Thank you, FreshBooks. Today's episode is also brought to you in part by Third Love. Third Love is a company that makes bras and underwear designed for the modern woman. When it comes to bra shopping, it's all about finding the right size for you. And there's only one brand of lingerie that offers bras in size AA through G, and they have half cup sizes. And that's Third Love. Third Love uses thousands of real women's measurements and super smoothing memory foam to create bras that fit great and feel great. I love them. And did you know that most bra companies only carry 15 sizes? Well, at Third Love, our friends there, they carry 60 sizes, including the half cup sizes. So find the bra that fits for you. There's even a Fit Finder quiz, and you never have to have that awkward fitting room experience again. They're just really great. I absolutely love them, and I'm so excited that they're a sponsor. This year, make the change that will change the way you think about bras. Go to thirdlove.com/letitout now to find your perfect fitting bra and get 15% off your first purchase. That's thirdlove.com/letitout. thirdlove.com/letitout for 15% off your first purchase. those were the sponsors. I hope you enjoy them. Check out Third Love, check out FreshBooks. I love you guys. And the emoji for this episode is I gotta look on my phone real quick for emojis, but I just want to pick a great one. Okay, the emoji for this week's episode is the rocket ship, because I've been using that one, and that's just what it is this week. So the rocket ship. Tweet that at me, comment it on my Instagram and at Deanie's Instagram to let us know that you're still listening all the way to the end. I love you, and I'll talk to you in 3 weeks. Bye!